Lord of Mysteries, Amon, I'm Here to Steal Your Throne by author Zhi Chi Rou Zong. Chapter 159-182. Lanius, you're still here. Chapter 159. Lanlos, you still haven't left. How did you manage to track this down? Kornli asked. We have a portrait of Lanlos, Leonard said excitedly. I took the portrait and asked the neighbors on this street. One elderly gentleman said the portrait looked somewhat similar to the tenant at number 62, except for his eyes. Glasses can be taken off at any time. Leonard, my dear, classmate, why are you being so proactive right now? The landlord said this house was rented to a single gentleman, but he often travels to the southern continent for business and rarely returns. Leonard gently twisted the doorknob with his hand, and the tightly locked door made him frown. Leave it to me. Kornli pulled out the only dagger he had left from his lower back, jammed it into the keyhole, twisted it hard, and then gently lifted it. The door slowly opened. Professional matters should still be handled by professionals, Leonard nodded admiringly. Leonard, don't say that. The one residing in you is an ancestor-level existence. Kornli muttered a silent criticism, followed Klein into the house, and quickly shut the door. Don't move. What are you doing? Leonard frowned. In my perception, there is no one inside this house. Klein immediately stopped moving, knowing that Kornli's every word carried profound meaning. Klein, perform a divination. Is there any malicious gaze watching us nearby? Kornli asked. Kornli, what are you doing? Leonard was about to say something when his head tilted slightly. Let him do it, the old man's voice echoed in his mind. He must have sensed something that shouldn't be here. This is very important. Leonard nodded to Kornli, walked to the back door himself, and carefully observed the surroundings. Old man, what exactly are you talking about? We are only here to track a financial fraudster, he said in an extremely low voice. Your perspective on the issue is too simplistic, Palace Zoroast replied to Leonard's question without any hint of anger. In this world, money is always just a tool. Klein pondered for a few seconds, took his cane, stood it gently on the ground, and a trace of his spirituality passed through the cane directly into the ground. Then, he slowly let go. This was the divinatory method of cane divination. I seek the source of the gaze that holds unusual attention toward this house. I seek the source of the gaze that holds unusual attention toward this house. I seek the source of the gaze that holds unusual attention toward this house. Klein chanted 3 times. The cane remained motionless in the middle of the floor, showing no reaction at all. It should be safe. Before Klein could finish speaking, the cane in the middle of the floor suddenly fell towards the direction of the main door they had entered through. Sure enough, someone was monitoring this place. Kornli violently pulled open the door, and a familiar face flashed past in the bushes about 80 meters away. He stood up, smiling, seemingly very satisfied that Kornli had discovered his presence. That refined face wore gold-rimmed glasses, his features were handsome, and a slight smile played on the corner of his mouth. Lanlos. This guy actually hadn't left Tingen City. Chase him. Leonard rushed out of the room, his right hand already drawing his long-barreled revolver, aiming at Lanlos in the distance. Lanlos showed no intention of escaping. He pulled out a massive book from his chest. The book moved without wind, automatically hovering in front of him. I came, I saw, I recorded. Lanlos chanted in Hermes language. A blue light appeared behind him. He stepped backward into the blue light, gave a slight bow towards Leonard's pursuing figure, and his body vanished. That bastard, Leonard cursed angrily. Revolvers only have a good hit rate within 50 meters. If he had fired just now, there was a high probability he would have missed. If only he had the captain's dream into ability. Now you finally realize how weak your ability is, Palace Zoroast mocked in Leonard's mind. To saints and angels, a sequence 8 doesn't even qualify to carry our shoes. Damn it, old man. Leonard spat, turning to look at Kornli, who had just caught up, and Klein, who was running up behind him. How did you find out? Leonard looked at Kornli suspiciously. How did he find out? Lanlos is such an arrogant exhibitionist. Since he left clues here, he would be unhappy if he wasn't present to watch our surprised expressions. However, he certainly couldn't tell Leonard this. A gut feeling. Intuition, Kornli said, spreading his hands sincerely. I can't explain too much. If you were a swindler, you would understand. But I am a midnight poet. This statement instantly silenced Leonard. The three returned inside the house. Under the effects of Klein's divination and Kornli's Eye of Wealth, the two quickly discovered a hidden compartment inside the house, along with the letter left by Lanlos. Klein performed his third divination of the day. To avoid any unexpected situations, he used dream divination. There is no danger associated with the letter. Klein opened his eyes. It is just a very ordinary piece of correspondence. Leonard took the letter, opened it, and read it out word by word. Ha ha ha, congratulations to you. Congratulations on finally finding this letter. This proves that you are not too stupid or too dull, and you are qualified to participate in this game of life and death I have designed. Child laborers who constantly die young, factory workers who rarely live past 10 years due to the environment and hard labor, female workers who risk serious illness just to earn meager wages. I see countless grievances shrouding every factory, making the surroundings oppressive and dark. This is the worst of times, and it is also the best of times. Our game will begin against this backdrop. Idiots, prepare yourselves. I am going to give you a hint. This guy is a genuine lunatic with paranoia and antisocial personality disorder, Leonard cursed, then continued reading. Ladies and gentlemen, my hint is that I have planted a bomb in Tingen City, a bomb that will continuously grow stronger over time. Go find it, and resolve it before it explodes on its own. If the game fails, with a boom, the entire Tingen City will turn into ruins. Believe me, regarding this matter, I have not engaged in any deception. Lanlos, who loves bringing surprises to his friends. Klein, let's defuse the bomb. Chapter 160. Klein, let's go defuse the bomb. Lanlos's body appeared in the living room of the house at 5 Engle Street. His head felt dizzy, but his face wore a satisfied smile. A page fell from the book in his hand, spontaneously combusted in the air without wind, and turned into ashes. You saw what you wanted to see. Mr. Z sat on the opposite sofa. His face was pale, and the skin on his arms, having only recently grown back, made him look like a corpse newly emerged from the grave. A fanatical smile spread across his pale face, mirroring the smile on Lanlos's face. As you said, playing tricks on those official beyonders is indeed a very entertaining thing. Don't put it that way, Mr. Lanlos, it is a unique pleasure, Mr. Z grinned. It is full of drama, making one tremble all over, a satisfaction akin to being immersed in the embrace of the Lord. Dramatic, the word was perfectly chosen. Lanlos showed an expression of admiration. This was far more interesting than swindling money from the fools awaiting his investment. He still felt a little dizzy, but he did not sit down on the empty sofa opposite Mr. Z, choosing to stand to show his respect for the other party. Since they have discovered your suicide note, it is time for you to leave here. Mr. Z stood up and drained the gin in his cup in one gulp, a flush appearing on his face that completely clashed with his complexion. You need a bigger stage. Go to Backlund. The third chapter of Doomsday, in your hand can be used one last time. Hand it over to our comrades. Before those fellows find this place. I obey your command, messenger of God. Lanlos bowed deeply, holding the third chapter of Doomsday with both hands. Aren't you leaving now? Lanlos watched as Mr. Z reached for the clothes, top hat, and cane draped over the nearby sofa. A deep flush appeared in his eyes. He opened the door, and the sunlight outside shone on his hands and body, his shadow behind him like a huge, dark, and profound cross. I feel that Tingen City still needs one perfect performance. Behind him, another blue light appeared in the Hermes language. A bomb. Leonard held up the note and turned it over repeatedly in the sunlight. The note was just an ordinary note, the paper and the ink were both very common, and he found no other clues. I think, bomb, is just a code word, Klein said thoughtfully. In mysticism, you can interpret a bomb as something that can explode and inflict damage on the surrounding environment. Considering the nature of those fellows in the Aurora Order, what they truly want to harm are people. A huge word suddenly appeared in Klein's mind. Contamination. I agree with the little fellow's view. The power held by those little bastards in the Aurora Order mostly revolves around manipulating flesh and soul. You need to speculate more in that direction. Pallas Zoroast's voice rang out in Leonard's mind. Although the old man sometimes liked to tease him, his knowledge of mysticism was vast and profound. Compared to him, the little bit of knowledge in his own head was completely inadequate. Child laborers who constantly die young, factory workers who rarely live past their prime due to the environment and hard labor, female workers who risk serious illness for meager wages. Leonard muttered. Perhaps we should approach this from that angle. Kornli nodded. There's nothing else here. Let's go. The captain needs to be informed about this. Leonard nodded and walked out of the house with Kornli and Klein, heading toward the carriage. Hey, Leonard, can I borrow this carriage? Kornli suddenly asked. Klein and I still have something to do. I'll reimburse you for the carriage fare back. If you put it that way, all right. Leonard didn't doubt him. Are you heading back to the team headquarters later? Yes. Please tell the captain that I left something on my desk in Klein's room. This is what I promised to give him today. Ask him to fetch it himself. Kornli winked his left eye. It's a gift for the captain. A gift, but I believe the captain definitely won't want to see it right now. Okay. Leonard brushed his messy hair back with his right hand, hailed a private carriage, and quickly boarded the compartment. 36 Zuideland Street. As the private carriage slowly departed, Kornli turned to look at Klein. Hey, today is a big day. You look mysterious today. Klein reached out and opened the carriage door. Kornli stepped forward and gripped Klein's right hand. You drive today. Me. Klein looked around to ensure no one was present and whispered in Chinese, you know my driving skill can barely make the carriage move, I'm nowhere near as skilled as you. He keenly felt that Kornli's right hand was trembling slightly, something he had never witnessed before. I wasn't completely prepared. I thought everything I did would buy us a little time, but it seems time has run out. Damn it, Kornli, what are you trying to say? A sense of inner turmoil filled Klein. His heart quickly thumped twice. This was the signal from his intuitive warning. What happens next will be extremely dangerous. You must be careful. Remember, no matter what happens, do not open your spirit vision. If you are hit, drink this. Kornli pulled a bottle of blue-black potion from his pocket and pressed it into Klein's palm. Let's go. We're going to defuse the bomb. Defuse the bomb. The bomb. Does Kornli know what the bomb is? And where it is? Damn it, why am I not surprised at all? Klein muttered, climbed onto the driver's seat, and forcefully whipped the reins. The two well-trained horses keenly sensed that their boss, driving them today seemed like a novice, snorted in dissatisfaction, and slowly moved forward. Where are we going? Klein shouted back through the small window connecting to the carriage compartment. 42 Gerald Street, Kornli replied, reaching out and drawing the curtains on both sides of the window. 42 Gerald Street, why does that name sound so familiar? Klein's eyes widened. That was the residence of Lanlos's fiancée, Majaus. Majaus is the bomb. A bomb that constantly grows stronger over time. The words on the note he had just seen flashed through Klein's mind like lines of subtitles. Time passing, constantly growing stronger. What does Majaus have that can constantly grow stronger over time? She is just a pregnant woman. Mysticism, pregnancy, I. Chapter 161 Captain Dunn. Kornli, your gift to me. Kornli, do you mean that fetus is the bomb? Klein asked in a low voice, looking through the car window. You figured it out, Kornli said. With your intelligence, it took less than 10 seconds. That's commendable. Symbolism, mapping, substitution, these are all things one should master in mysticism, Kornli added. Damn mysticism, it can be played this way too. What exactly is she carrying? When Lanlos, that idiot, injected his essence, he must have silently chanted the true creator's honorific name, imbuing a trace of divinity into his injection. Kornli's voice trembled slightly, sounding somewhat unlike his own. This trace of divinity, combined with birth and the concept of fleshly growth, caused the true creator, with 1,000th, or 1/10,000th, or 1/1,000,000th of his divinity, to be born. Kornli's voice grew even more ethereal. Kornli, what are you doing? Your voice doesn't sound like yours anymore. As Kornli in the carriage finished speaking, he pulled out a bone whistle from his Y and blew it forcefully. The white bone door struggled to open inside the carriage, only half its original size. Miss Grace, the messenger, poked out half her body with a questioning look at Kornli. Couldn't you have chosen a slightly more suitable place? Please inform our dear Death Consul, Your Excellency, to turn his gaze toward me. Kornli revealed an awkward smile, immediately. Miss Grace nodded, her head quickly retracted, and the white bone door dissolved into ashes, swiftly falling inside the carriage and vanishing. Sorry, dear Miss Grace, for making you dismantle a door. Kornli took a deep breath, rubbed his face hard, and looked at Geraldo Street, which was getting closer. Captain, this is the note from Lanlos we found. Leonard walked into Captain Dunn's office and handed the note to Dunn Smith, who was leaning back in his chair, enjoying the pleasure of tobacco. This fellow is still in Tingen City, and he even watched you take the note he left behind. It's truly infuriating, Captain Dunn said calmly after reading the note. Captain, you have such good self-control. I couldn't see any sign of you being infuriated. Notify the police station to intensify patrols at the train station, the docks, and private carriage rental companies. We've spotted him, he'll definitely try to leave Tingen City. All right, Captain. Leonard stood up, preparing to leave, his head unconsciously tilting slightly. One more thing, Captain. Kornli said he left you a gift in his desk drawer and told you to go get it. A gift? Left by Kornli? Captain Dunn smiled. I understand. After Leonard left, Captain Dunn got up and went to old Neil's former office, now the room shared by Kornli and Klein. The newly added desk in the corner must be Kornli's, and his cigarette case was still on it. Captain Dunn pulled open the middle drawer, revealing a note with his favorite bag of Ales brand tobacco resting on it. What is this Kornli fellow up to again? Captain Dunn opened the note, and the lines of scribbled handwriting made his pupils involuntarily contract. He quickly walked into the squad room, his expression serious. What I'm about to say is very urgent. All of you, act immediately according to my instructions. In the faculty dormitory of Hoi University in Tingen City, Isaac Eggers was tidying up the pile of precious books on his bookshelf. Many of them were ancient texts, seemingly so fragile that their pages would fall off if touched. Their numbers seemed to exceed even that in the Hoi University library. Those were his usual collections, trophies, from his search. After all, the places he wanted to find and the things he had experienced were sometimes more real than what was recorded in books. Mr. Isaac suddenly straightened up, a faint sound reaching his ears. They're here. He turned without hesitation and pulled, and a door of the underworld, connecting to the underworld stretched open before him. He grabbed his favorite black semi-top hat and black cane, and strode inside. We're here. Klein pulled hard on the reins, and the carriage slowly stopped at the entrance of 42 Geraldo Street. This is the place. The true creator's original intention was to extend the flames of war to the doorstep of our squad, where, besides combat personnel like Luo Yao, Shijia, Fry, and Leonard, there were also Mrs. Oriana, Roseanne, and the two new clerical staff who had been there for less than a month. Those lovely friends are like my family, how could I possibly let you get hurt? I have already saved old Neil's life and soul, so please allow me to continue saving your lives. Kornli was almost certain that if Lanlos was seen and then fled, the true creator's bomb within Majaus's womb would be detonated as quickly as possible. However, Majaus is an ordinary woman, a pregnant woman. For her to come to the squad's headquarters, she would have to take a carriage. And a woman needing to take a carriage, meaning before leaving home, would definitely put on makeup and simply get dressed, and all of this takes time. This bit of time was exactly what he needed. He used this time to arrange the battlefield one step ahead, right at Majaus's doorstep. Evacuate the surrounding crowd, as quickly as possible, Kornli whispered to Klein, then pulled open the carriage door forcefully, just in time to see Majaus, also opening her door, wearing a light yellow maternity dress and holding a sun umbrella. A gust of wind blew into the carriage, gently dislodging the wanted poster of Lanlos on the seat opposite Kornli, letting it fall onto the carriage floor. Klein turned his head, looking at Lanlos, emerging from the carriage. If he hadn't known that he had just come directly with Kornli from 62 Horse Street, and if all the conversations in the carriage hadn't come from Kornli's mouth, he would have already pulled out his pistol and emptied his clip without hesitation. Kornli, you can play it this way too. Kornli, who had changed his face to look exactly like Lanlos, quickly jumped off the carriage. Under Majaus's surprised gaze, he slowly walked towards her, spreading his arms like lovers who hadn't seen each other for months, and approached the steps where Majaus stood. My dear, I'm back, Lanlos said in a devout tone. Majaus's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the face she had longed for day and night. She knelt weakly on the steps, watching Lanlos's right hand gently caress her abdomen, which looked 9 months pregnant. My dear child, I am your father. Chapter 162, the best play in Tingen City's history. My dear, how have you been lately? How are your family treating you? Kornli greeted Majouse warmly, like a husband returning from a long journey. The only thing he needed to do now was to use the image of Lanlos brought by the distortion bracelet to stall for enough time. You heartless, Majouse gazed at her husband with gentle eyes, slowly answering her husband's questions under the influence of sufficient hormones. Her right hand involuntarily curled, playing with a strand of her golden hair. Strands of hair slowly fell to the ground beside him. Kornli pretended not to see the bloodstains and large chunks of scalp on them, continuing his fervent conversation with her. Klein got out of the carriage and began to gently knock on the door of the house opposite, holding his detective ID in his right hand, ready to present it at any moment. As he gently knocked, the door opened a small crack, and a thick, foul smell of blood wafted out, much like the first time he entered Riel Bieber's home and smelled the corpse of his mother, Katie Stefana Bieber. A normal person's nose definitely couldn't endure such a smell. They are all dead. Klein knocked on the doors of one house after another. 10 minutes later, the doors of 7 consecutive houses here were gently pushed open. The bloody smell had already permeated Klein's nose and slowly spread to the entire street. Come on, Kornli, keep stalling for time. Klein ran quickly. What are you doing here today? Majouse suddenly looked at Lanlos with confusion, her hands twitching involuntarily. She forcefully clawed at her face with her right hand, tearing off a large piece of bloody skin without hesitation and tossing it aside, seemingly with a hint of impatience. They are still after you, hurry up and leave. Majouse stood up and forcefully pushed Lanlos, who was helping her up. The latter seemed caught off guard, falling to the ground, his right hand reaching out desperately, looking at Majouse with surprised eyes. You don't love me anymore, Lanlos murmured. Klein ran quickly. A hand powerfully grabbed his arm. Klein was caught off guard and pulled into a dense thicket of bushes. It's me. Captain Dunn's voice sounded beside him. Klein focused his gaze and saw it was Captain Dunn Smith, dressed in a gray trench coat, wearing a top hat, and holding a cane. Luo Yao and Fry are evacuating the residents of the street behind and the street in front, then they will leave. Captain, how did you know? Klein asked, puzzled. I saw the note Kornli left for me. I rushed over as fast as I could. Captain Dunn looked at the scene 100 meters away. He also warned me not to use spirit vision to look over there. Kornli was truly thoughtful. Did he bring any sealed artifacts that can handle this situation? Klein asked eagerly. Captain Dunn pulled open his clothes, revealing a rectangular black box with intricate patterns and the crimson moon symbol on each corner. I brought Saint Selena's ashes, Captain Dunn said in a deep voice. Saint Selena's ashes. Klein was startled, suddenly remembering old Neil once said that certain great figures' body organs would retain great power, and these organs could also serve as sealed artifacts. I have many questions, just like you, but we'll have to wait until Kornli finishes the situation over there, Captain Dunn said. I believe the person wearing Lanlos faces are Kornli. That's right, Captain. Klein said, he certainly has a knack for scams. Captain Dunn didn't continue speaking, a smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. No, all the police, detectives, and bounty hunters who took the reward in Tingen City are looking for you, Majouse said impatiently. You have the money to leave this place. I promise you, I will give birth to this child. That child in your belly is already getting impatient, looking for reasons to urge me to leave and ignite the entire Tingen City. Don't forget, right now, I am your father. No. Lanlos stood up resolutely from the grass. I want to prove to you that I am not a bad man. I will fulfill a man's responsibilities. I'm not going anywhere today. I'll stay here with you and let them arrest me. Even in prison, I will find a way to watch this child grow up. This is my child, Lanlos said emphatically. The corners of Klein's and Captain Dunn's mouths simultaneously curved into a smile. Klein grabbed a handful of dirt from the ground and squeezed it tightly in his palm, hiding the smile on his lips. This is the best play I've ever seen, Captain Dunn said leisurely. Without a doubt. It's too late, Majouse murmured. She scratched her arm forcefully, and a long strip of flesh was torn from her left arm, bloody and raw, with a glimpse of white bone visible inside. That child, no, it should be referred to as it. It had already sensed something was wrong and was gradually gaining control over the pregnant woman's hormones within Mei Zhao's, beginning to control Mei Zhao's actions. It was about to emerge. I'm leaving. Kornli stood up, trying his best to control Mei Zhao's emotions with a man's actions. I took a huge risk just to see you and the child. If you insist, Kornli's eyes showed a hint of reluctance. At least before I go, let me touch our child one last time. Mei Zhao hesitated and nodded. Kornli took a step forward, his right hand slowly reaching out, gently touching Mei Zhao's belly. The coffin nail he had hidden in his right hand, which he had obtained from old Neil, was forcefully plunged into Mei Zhao's belly. Black energy from death was released from the coffin nail, rushing through blood vessels and flesh into Mei Zhao's body. Her eyes widened, her fingernails suddenly elongated, and she clawed at Kornli's face. Kornli, who was already prepared, immediately fell onto the grass, rolling repeatedly, quickly moving away from the wooden steps of Mei Zhao's house, and swiftly standing up. I am your father. Kornli spread his arms towards the sky, as if embracing everything, and shouted in a dramatic voice. Captain Dunn and Klein exchanged glances, simultaneously drawing their revolvers and rushing forward. It was their turn to enter the stage. Chapter 163. Kornli, today was awesome. Awesome. This was his first time being a father to an evil god, and it truly felt awesome. The awesomeness lasted only a second, now it was time to face the consequences of that awesomeness. Mei Zhao's right eye had fallen out of its socket due to rage. She opened her mouth, and silent, blasphemous words issued forth. Kornli felt the surroundings blur. He forcibly concentrated his attention and accurately threw a handful of dirt-covered green grass, roots and all, that he had just grabbed from the ground, into Mei Zhao's mouth. You should still be making sounds with your mouth. If I block your mouth, there shouldn't be any more noise, right? From a distance, Klein found it rather amusing. He and Captain Dunn simultaneously quickened their pace, doing their utmost to close the distance to 50 meters. On his left hand, he already wore the thin, cicada wing-like, wriggling hunger. Only at this distance would the revolver and most of his abilities have a certain degree of accuracy. Mei Zhao forcefully tore at her mouth with both hands, pulling out the dirt along with a part of her tongue. Her mouth was ripped open all the way to her ears. Her eyes suddenly fixed on Captain Dunn, who was almost within 50 meters of her. He had already opened a box and was reaching in to retrieve something. It instinctively sensed a threat. No matter who it was, he couldn't be allowed to take out that sealed artifact. Captain Dunn opened the box, took out the blood vessel thief, quickly wrapped it around his hand, and extended his right hand towards Mei Zhao's. Kornli watched as the blood vessel thief on the captain's right wrist tightened, and Mei Zhao's eyes became momentarily dazed. For an instant, she seemed to forget how to use blasphemous words. An extraordinary language instantly appeared in Captain Dunn's mind, and at the same time, he understood its function and how to use it. Kneel. He simultaneously uttered blasphemous words, imbued with an extremely rich dark quality. Klein, at this moment, had also run to within 30 meters of Mei Zhao's. At this range, the accuracy of his revolver attacks, combined with his clown power, could achieve almost 100% hit rate. Bang, bang, bang. He fired all 6 bullets in one go. Mei Zhao's head was riddled with holes. Through the bullet holes, Klein and Kornli could see wriggling flesh, grayish-black brain tissue, and slowly merging, self-repairing blood vessels. Mei Zhao knelt on the ground. Her light yellow maternity dress was stained with blood and dirt. A large amount of colorless water seeped from her lower body. The muscles on her shoulders twitched irregularly, as if something was breaking through her internal muscles, trying to emerge from her shoulder. My child, are you so eager to see this world? And what your father looks like? Kornli wiped his face with his hand, revealing his original appearance. Surprise. Unexpected. Such an action undoubtedly drew all the hatred onto Kornli. A faceless, infant-sized head shape appeared on Mei Zhao's left shoulder, silently roaring at Kornli. She didn't turn her head. Her right fingernails elongated, and she forcefully slashed her left shoulder. Black blood slowly flowed out. Not good. Kornli's eyes widened. Mage House had bestowed a mouth upon her infant. It can now fight us using its mouth. It seems there are quite a few corpses here. A voice came from a distance, approaching. The man wore an Evernight goddess robe, with a black eye patch over his left eye, and his voice was grave and steady. On his right hand, a golden quill floated in midair, constantly writing something. Lines of golden characters appeared on it, then continuously vanished. Ins Zangwil and 0008, the Quill of Alzuhad. Dunn clutched the box to his chest, but this box had once, or rather, until 2 hours ago, contained Saint Selena's ashes. That strong death aura still drew enough attention from Ins Zangwil, the former archbishop of the Evernight goddess, who didn't hesitate to personally join this chaotic battle. He used his right index and middle fingers to pinch 0008, slowly pushing his palms forward. A bronze-colored door, covered in mysterious patterns, slowly appeared before everyone. That was the door where the spirit world and the underworld overlapped. Inside the door, countless hands pushed against the ground. Skeletons climbed out, taking their ribs as weapons. Ince's dark green eyes fixed on Kornli, Klein, and Captain Dunn, as they slowly emerged. Crack! Kornli crushed a bone charm in his hand, uttering an unpleasant Hermes language that sounded like a corpse struggling to purse its lips, trying to blow a bubble from its mouth. Obey! The soul flames in the eyes of the skeletons that had emerged from the door turned bluish-green. Under Kornli's command, they turned to face their unconverted companions and began to fight each other. Ince and Dunn and Klein and Mage House. Sorry, where were we? Kornli made an awkward expression to everyone, raised the thorn of ash he had already drawn from his right hand, pulled back the hammer halfway, and fired a shot at Mage House's shoulder. He used a spread shot for this one. The bullets created 6 holes in Mage House's shoulder, destroying the mouth she had painstakingly carved out. You now have 7 mouths, do you know which one to make a sound with? Mage House was furious. The flesh on her hands slowly peeled off, and her bones, under her command, merged into 2 sharp bone swords, attacking Kornli not far away. Damn it, can't you wait a moment? Kornli scrambled, rolling twice on the grass, dodging Mage House's attacks. On the other side, Captain Dunn drew his rapier, wrapped with the blood vessel thief, and launched a fierce assault on Ince Zangwil. He was very clear that attacking a Beander of the death sequence with a revolver had very little effect, let alone the fact that the opponent was a gatekeeper. Good swordsmanship. Ince parried Captain Dunn's attack with his cane. I said, there are a lot of corpses here, which means a lot of souls and flesh. A green glow appeared in his eyes, rapidly radiating outwards. Resurrection. The corpses, drained of blood and souls, slowly rose under Ince's command, began to walk, then jog, and rapidly ran towards Kornli and his 2 companions. Darkness. Klein threw out the 2 requiem charms from his waist. With his Hermes language, those corpses fell one after another, their souls returning directly to the underworld through the door of bones. Ince Zangwil sighed, withdrawing his spiritual power from the corpses. Those corpses, long devoid of life, fell to the ground again, still a considerable distance from where he wanted to deliver this flesh to Mage House. Ince thought Kornli had a sealed artifact that could block his bronze door, but he hadn't expected that his ability could completely restrain his death sequence. How was he supposed to fight now? Chapter 164, Kornli's Grand Design. Ever since Ince Zangwil advanced to Spirit Guide, his offensive methods had undergone significant changes. Observing the surrounding environment for available corpses and gathering sufficient information from nearby spirits allowed him to calmly face every battle in any situation. After advancing to Gatekeeper, mastering the ability to connect to the spirit world through the gate of the underworld, and summoning undead creatures by using his body as a cage, his attack methods became more diverse. However, he had to take action less and less frequently. Most of the time, he let the wraiths, corpses, and other undead creatures he summoned do the work. However, after encountering Kornli today, he found that the power he relied on for survival was completely ineffective against the opponent's strange abilities. The quill of Alzuhad in his right hand responded to its master's will and quickly wrote in the air. Lines of golden script appeared before everyone, like marks suddenly carved and chiseled into the air. Ince Zangwil felt his abilities suppressed, but he didn't realize this was a trap set specifically for him. A trap. Ince Zangwill's steps faltered slightly. Captain Dunn keenly seized this opportunity, raising the head of the blood vessel thief in his right hand high, pointing it at Ince Zangwill. Oblivion. He uttered a blasphemous word, again, and a pale streak silently appeared on his hair tips. The usage time for the blood vessel thief was almost up. Klein now fully understood Kornli's intention. He took a step forward, spread his hands towards the sky, and looked with stern eyes at Mei Zhao's, who was entangled with Kornli on his left. Or rather, what remained of Mei Zhao's. Light. A massive pillar of light descended from the sky, striking Mei Zhao's head. She let out a tragic cry, and her 2 fingers, only 3 centimeters long, forcefully pried open a gap on her shoulder. A baby's cry echoed throughout the area. Wah! The sound, like a sonic wave, emanated from Mei Zhao's position, hitting Kornli, Klein, Captain Dunn, and Ince Zangwill simultaneously. The grass at the entrance, with Mei Zhao's as the center, flattened in a huge circle around her. Well done, Klein, I knew you would deliver that attack at the right time. Disappear, Kornli calmly uttered in dragon language. His figure transformed into a phantom and vanished before everyone's eyes. Captain Dunn's lips curved slightly. He propped himself up with his left hand on the ground, quickly rolled twice, and when he stood up, his left hand already held his revolver. Bang 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 bang. He fired all 6 bullets in one breath, aiming at Ince Zangwill, who was not far from him. He already knew what Kornli was going to do. This was the most crucial point in this battle. Klein was knocked over by the massive sound wave. He propped himself up with his knees and hands on the grass, then quickly bounced up like an old clown's sock, his eyes fixed on Mei Zhao's 25 meters away. Light. Kornli's vision turned black and white, re-entering a world only he could see. In his eyes, Ince Zangwill was like a profound mass of black aura, and the quill of Alzuhad in his hand glittered with dazzling light like a star in the night. This was his target. As arranged, Captain Dunn Smith took out the box containing Saint Serena's ashes, but the ashes inside had been temporarily moved to a safe box, which instead contained the blood vessel thief. Ince Zangwill, of course, knew what a safe box was. His skin turned the iron-gray color of a corpse, and his muscles peristalsis, slowly expelling the iron bullets from within, which then dropped to the ground. At his sequence, ordinary bullets were completely ineffective. The box containing Saint Serena's ashes was filled with sufficient saint aura. For Ince Zangwill, this was the crucial Beander material that could allow him to advance to a saint. After preparing for so long, it finally appeared at the scene of the Nighthawks team's battle with Mei Zhao's. He planned to ambush and obtain this Beander material. He knew all this, but it was too late. This was a huge trap set for him, and only the designer knew everything. Before this, he had not told anyone the entire plan completely. Although he didn't tell anyone, the 2 people present had quickly filled in the necessary information in their minds and tried their best to stall for time. At this moment, Ince Zangwill saw with frustration that the opponent's name was replaced with a blank, clearly even the name had been hidden. Damn it, the opponent was clearly prepared. The quill of Alzuhad wasn't lying to him at this moment. The guy who was restricting him was clearly the mastermind behind today's plan. Where is he? A few drops of cold sweat seeped from Ince Zangwill's face. Kornli rapidly ran several meters forward, then pushed off with his feet, his entire body spinning in midair. His eyes were filled with the image of the quill of Alzuhad. Because there was no prior arrangement with the quill of Alzuhad suddenly vanished. Ince Zangwill horrifyingly discovered that he had suddenly lost contact with the quill of Alzuhad. Without this sealed artifact, he would not only lose his source of information but his attacking power would also drop significantly. Now, he was just a gatekeeper wanted by the Night Goddess Church. Run. Must run. Appear. Kornli's body appeared 3 meters away. He quickly blew the bone whistle, and a huge, 2-meter-tall bone gate connecting to the underworld appeared beside him. This door looks a bit new. Grace Tally half emerged from within. Kornli unhesitatingly shoved the quill of Alzuhad into her outstretched hand. Find a place to hide in the spirit world. Yes, sir. Miss Grace turned and left. Ince Zangwill could only see her eyes sweep over him, as if looking at a stone completely unrelated to herself. He was already a gatekeeper, yet he didn't even qualify as prey. This look sent shivers down Ince Zangwill's spine. His hands slowly pushed forward, and the bronze door, connecting the spirit world and the underworld reappeared before everyone. The door slowly opened, gradually revealing a gap just wide enough for one person to pass through. Massive numbers of skeletal arms emerged from the ground, waving slowly towards the people on the scene like a field of white grass. It was a huge trap. Unless one was of the death sequence, their body would be torn to shreds by those arms in an instant. Zhangwil shot Kornli a resentful look, then turned and walked quickly towards the bronze door, dozens of meters away without looking back. He had been set up by the Night Goddess Church, and he would definitely get his lost face back. A crack appeared out of thin air in the grass. Azek Eggers strode out from within, casually tossing a dark, death-infused energy ball at Majouse nearby. With his left hand, he conjured and grabbed Zhangwil's bronze door, then clenched his fist tightly, as if the shape of the bronze door was being crushed by his power, gradually flattening like a pancake. Today, you're not leaving. Chapter 165 Captain, we're all alive. The massive death aura quickly invaded her body through the coffin nail Kornli had pressed into Majouse's stomach. Boundless death energy lingered inside her body, destroying everything it could destroy. Blood vessels, muscles, thoughts, and that faint trace of divinity. Pale yellow bodily fluid mixed with dark red blood flowed out from Majouse's lower body, corroding everything around it. At this moment, Klein also withdrew his hands that were raised toward the sky and glanced at Kornli in the distance. Majouse and the true creator's child inside her should be dealt with. Zhangwil turned his head in horror and glanced at Mr. Azek, who was slowly walking toward him not far away. A crushing force emanated from him, a terrifying power that made Ince want to turn away and kneel on the ground. He also belongs to the death sequence, and his sequence is higher than mine. Not he, but he. He is at least a saint. Ince's mouth was filled with bitterness. He knew the strict hierarchical relationship within the death sequence. A higher rank means the opponent can dominate your fate, life, death, and soul. Fortunately, he seemed to have just entered the saint domain and was not yet proficient with his power. He bit down hard on the tip of his tongue, letting the blood in his mouth fully release his residual spirituality, ordering the speed at which the bronze gate closed to slow slightly. He hurriedly walked across the land of white bones, which no longer obeyed his commands, not even caring that parts of his robe were torn off by the bone hands. I'll pursue him, Mr. Azek said hastily, striding forward and plunging into the bronze gate, his emerald eyes radiating light of fury. In the underworld, he did not believe anyone could be his opponent. Kornli glared at Klein, and only then did Klein realize there was one more thing he hadn't done. Drink the bottle of medicine Kornli gave him. Kornli stood 5 meters away from Majouse, took out the cylinder, and calmly reloaded the Thorn of Ash with 6 brand new bullets before pulling back the firing pin. Praise the goddess. Bang, 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 bang. 6 bullets struck Majouse's abdomen. Kornli felt a sense of relief wash over his entire body, every single cell felt as comfortable as if it had been relaxed. Large sheets of glass shattering sounded in his ears and echoed in his mind. His swindler potion had been digested. In the holy texts of any church, his actions just now would be considered having served as a holy father for over an hour. He picked up the box containing Saint Selena's ashes, untied the blood vessel thief from Captain Dunn's wrist and put it inside, then handed the box to Captain Dunn. He watched in surprise as the captain's temples had slightly turned white. I always wanted to try dyeing my hair, Captain Dunn said with a smile. It's good enough just to be alive. Yes, Captain, we are all alive. Just then, Klein let out a painful groan and slowly collapsed onto the ground, his face pale, his entire body curled up like a shrimp. Kornli, what the hell did you make me drink? It's so astringent. This was the last thought in Klein's mind. Klein. Captain Dunn hurried over. He watched in surprise as Klein's hair turned grayish-white, a black aura enveloped his face, and the muscles in his face and hands trembled incessantly. I'll take him to the cathedral, Kornli said, hastily, casually tucking the medicine bottle Klein had hidden in his palm into his own chest. Captain Dunn took out a silver whistle and blew it. Luo Yao and the others, who heard the signal 3 blocks away, rushed over. Handle this place. Kornli carried Klein onto the carriage, and Captain Dunn drove him to St. Selena Cathedral, placing him in a second-floor room. Emmanuel Harris, the best doctor of the Night Goddess Church in Tingen City, rushed over upon hearing the news and poured a bottle of multicolored potion down Klein's throat, but he remained unconscious. Dr. Emmanuel walked out of the second-floor room, slowly closed the wooden door, and arrived at the chapel downstairs. "I apologize, I don't have the capability," Dr. Emmanuel said regretfully, addressing the other team members waiting in the chapel. "What illness does he have?" Fry asked anxiously. "It's not an illness, but a type of curse. The potion, Goddess's Gaze, that we are currently using has no effect on this curse," Dr. Emmanuel said, regretfully taking off his glasses and wiping them with his robe. "You should invite someone from the Holy Cathedral." Everyone's eyes turned toward Captain Dunn Smith. "Kornli, come with me to send a telegram," Captain Dunn stood up and said calmly to everyone. "The rest of you go rest. The team needs people to guard the Chinese gate tonight." "Yes, Captain." Leonard patted the others on the shoulder. "I'll take the shift guarding the Chinese gate tonight, you all need rest." "No, I still have to write a report," Captain Dunn shook his head. "Tomorrow, you still need to deal with the scene alongside the police department, and there are dozens of bodies that need to be buried. Tingen City hasn't had such a major incident in a long time." His gaze swept over Kornli and paused. He would not forget that when Tingen City fell into silence a few days ago, the situation was equally urgent. "With so many people dead, we must give the public an explanation," Captain Dunn said. "Even if it's a fabricated truth." Leonard nodded and followed Fry out of the cathedral. Kornli followed the captain through the tunnel below and back to the team's office. Roseanne watched Kornli and the captain appear and couldn't help but ask anxiously, "Klein, he? May the goddess bless him, he will be fine." Captain Dunn smiled, closing the door behind Kornli. Darkness. As Captain Dunn softly chanted a phrase in Hermes language, the entire captain's office plunged into complete darkness. He pulled out his pipe. Scratch asterisk, a match broke through the darkness and was held up in front of him. "What exactly are you two doing?" Captain Dunn sighed. "I truly don't understand. Captain, some things are inconvenient for me to say right now," Kornli sighed. "On the bright side, we drove away in Zhangwil, eliminated the true creator's offspring, and none of us are hurt. Isn't that a good thing?" Captain Dunn nodded silently. For Tingen City, this was definitely a good thing, a very good thing. Then Klein, "Captain, you should send a telegram to the Holy Cathedral now. Send it to Senior Deacon Crestet." Kornli smiled in the darkness. "He should know what to do." Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Chapter 166, Klein, you idiot brother. Melissa sang cheerfully as she kneaded dough for pies in the kitchen. Beside her was a bowl of minced meat, made with onions, veal, and peas. Tonight's dinner was veal pie, and she had even added some pungent black pepper to it. Although she didn't like it herself, Benson and Klein both enjoyed the flavor. Especially Klein. That idiot brother didn't come home yesterday, and she wasn't sure if he would return today. Melissa put down the dough, angrily put her hands on her hips, and extended her right hand, her thumb and forefinger twisting slightly, as if pinching the ear of an imaginary Klein standing before her. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of knocking came, and Benson, who was in the living room, put down Klein's grammar book, got up from the sofa, and opened the door. Standing before him was a detective, whom he seemed to have seen somewhere before. Oh, right. When the three of them lived on Iron Cross Street, he had once visited their home because of a case, and had even taken Klein away to assist with the investigation. "Good evening, I am Detective Dunn Smith." Captain Dunn took off his hat, a hint of apology in his gray eyes. "I'm very sorry." Captain Dunn watched Melissa walk behind Benson, sighing silently in his heart. Kornli, why do I have to do this? A ominous thought appeared in Melissa's mind. She clutched Benson's sleeve tightly with her right hand and said in a trembling voice, "Is it Klein?" "Is he?" "I'm afraid so." Captain Dunn sighed, "He's fallen into a coma." "Can I come in?" "This will be a long story." Captain Dunn said, "As family members, you have the right to know the truth. Or rather, a part of the truth that we have altered. Please come in." Benson wiped the corner of his eye and took Melissa's arm. "It's just a coma, just a coma." After the incident on Iron Cross Street, Mr. Klein Moretti agreed to serve as a police consultant, assisting us in translating some historical documents, while publicly stating that he worked for the company you know. The day before yesterday, we received a batch of historical artifacts, one of which was a hollow jar, but the movers didn't notice. The jar fell to the ground and shattered, and a powder contained within it volatilized into the air of the room. Captain Dunn sighed inwardly as he spoke. The story Kornli made up was a bit too complicated. Mr. Klein Moretti immediately rushed the other people in the room out, but he was standing too close to the jar and inhaled a large amount of the powder. Detective, Benson sighed, this is an accident. Just an accident. Captain Dunn stood up. Do you want to go see him? According to his faith, I have sent him to the St. Selena Cathedral of the Evernight Goddess, and the doctor I hired for him from the best hospital in Backlund will arrive here within a few hours. Yes, we want to go. Benson wiped the corner of Melissa's eye with his hand. It's just an accident, dear Melissa, he's just in a coma, nothing will happen. The carriage is outside. Captain Dunn stood up and said, I'll wait for you in the carriage. An hour later, Benson and Melissa saw the unconscious Klein on the second floor of St. Selena Cathedral. Melissa touched his hair and familiar face, sobbing softly. Excuse me, please move aside. Senior Deacon Crestet, carrying a black briefcase and wearing a borrowed doctor's robe, hurried in. Family members, please wait outside. He unceremoniously reached out and ushered Benson and Melissa out the door, then closed the door. He took out a small bottle of white medicine provided by Kornli from his pocket, carefully pried open Klein's mouth, and poured a small amount down his throat. Amidst violent coughing, Klein opened his eyes. Cresta quickly covered his mouth, signaling him not to speak. He took out 2 pages of paper from his briefcase and handed them to Klein. This is your script, Senior Deacon Crestet whispered, please play the role as written. Quote, script. Klein frowned, looking at Kornli's familiar and messy notes on the paper. 15 minutes later, Cresta put the script back into his briefcase and gave Klein a look that said, don't mess this up. He opened the door and nodded slightly to Benson and Melissa, the patient is awake. Brother. Melissa was about to rush over but was stopped by Cresta's strong arm. I'm sorry, you can only observe from here for now. The patient is very weak, and the substance in that powder might be contagious. Klein gave Melissa and Benson a pale smile, secretly cursing Kornli under his breath. Achoo! Kornli, who was organizing everything with the team, sneezed and silently rubbed his nose. We've seen this kind of illness before, but Tingen City temporarily lacks the conditions for recuperation. The patient must go to Backlund for intensive treatment to achieve the best results, Cresta said earnestly to Melissa and Benson. Backlund. Benson took a breath, that would probably cost a lot of pounds. Quote, the family had just gotten a little better, but their savings weren't much, only £30. Didn't Detective Dunn tell you? Cresta showed a perfectly timed expression of surprise. Because Mr. Klein Moretti was injured while on duty, the police department will fully cover his treatment expenses for the next 2 years. As family members, you don't need to worry. Okay, that's really good news. Wait. Benson just realized, you mean 2 years of fully enclosed recuperation, that's right. Cresta nodded. This powder from the artifact discovered in the Minsk Mountains metabolizes slowly in the human body and will take at least 2 years to be completely released into the bloodstream. Then these 2 years, Melissa said worriedly. You can write letters. I heard the police department might have arrangements for you, but that matter is not related to me, I am only responsible for the patient's transportation. Cresta clapped his hands, and 2 temporary assistants, his divine servants, carried in a stretcher, placed Klein on it, and carried him onto the carriage. I'll have him write to you. Cresta nodded, got up and boarded the carriage, driving away with Klein inside towards the outskirts of the city. Klein once mentioned your wishes. Captain Dunn, who was nearby, stood up and handed a yellow envelope to Melissa. This is. Melissa opened the envelope. Inside was a pale yellow, greenish-yellow letter paper with levers, gears, and steam engine patterns marked on its 4 corners. A striking line of large, flowing script was written on it. Miss Melissa Moretti, Backlund University's Department of Mechanical Engineering is honored to offer you an opportunity to study. Chapter 167 The Fate of the Tingen City Nighthawks Squad. This is. Melissa looked at Captain Dunn in disbelief. An admission letter. Yes, to be precise, it's an admission letter from 1 year in the future, Captain Dunn said. Klein once said that you have a talent for machinery, and you're currently studying at the Tingen City Institute of Mechanical Industry. Your studies will conclude in 8 months. To facilitate your family's reunion in the future, the police department has decided to send you a gift in advance. This is also Klein's wish. In 8 months, you will go to the Backlund University's Mechanical Engineering department to study and become a student there. Although you still won't be able to visit Klein, we hope the distance between you can be a little closer. Inside the admission letter, we have also advanced 1 year of Klein's weekly salary, totaling £390, Captain Dunn said with a smile. We hope this amount will be sufficient for your living expenses for the next year. Quote. Benson stared incredulously at the golden check inside. £390? No, this is too much money. The contract we signed with Mr. Klein Moretti is for 5 years. You can trust us. According to the contract, Klein will receive his weekly salary on time every year. Praise the goddess. Melissa and Benson both made the 4-point star gesture on their chests. Praise the goddess. As expected of the Tingen City Police Department, this arrangement was perfect, both from a family and a work perspective. If you have any questions, you can find Officer Zhi Chi Rou Zong, he knows how to find me. Captain Dunn saw Melissa and Benson into the carriage. Zhi Chi Rou Zong, sitting in the coachman's seat, took off his hat and nodded to Melissa and Benson. Please take them home. Thank you. Melissa's spirits had lifted slightly. With Benson's support, she was the first to get into the carriage. Your arrangements are very thoughtful. I don't even know how to thank you. Benson extended his hand and shook Captain Dunn's hand firmly. No, another person was involved in all of this. I hope that when we meet again, we can bring you different news. Captain Dunn stepped back, put on his hat, and waved goodbye to Benson and Melissa in the carriage. Phew, this matter is finally over. Captain Dunn rubbed his forehead. Besides here, a group of people were waiting for his explanation. He took a carriage back to the squad station and walked straight into the squad office, where Luo Yao, Shi Jia, Fry, Leonard, and Kornli were sitting quietly. Kornli sat opposite Leonard, in the squad spot closest to the window. The cigarette in his mouth continuously emitted puffs of smoke, and half his body leaned out the window, the smoke slowly dispersing with the gentle breeze outside. Many things happened yesterday, but thankfully no one was injured. Captain Dunn sat in Kornli's seat and thoroughly explained the details and circumstances of yesterday's events. Under Leonard's careful investigation, he discovered Lanlos's traces at number 62 Horse Street. When we opened the door, our Klein performed a routine divination and found traces of Lanlos. He is still in Tingen City, constantly monitoring our actions, and he also possesses a mystical item that allows him to leave through the spirit world at any time. After inspecting the house, Leonard found a note left by Lanlos. In the note, he mentioned that he had left a bomb. As you all know, that so-called bomb was Mei Jiao's and her child, a descendant of the true creator. Luo Yao and Shi Jia's hands clasped together involuntarily, only then did they realize how dangerous the situation had been. Just a street away, 100 or 200 meters from them, an officially certified evil god was silently being born. Aside from Captain Dunn and Kornli, everyone else felt a hint of severity in Captain Dunn's calm voice. Fortunately, we won in the end. Leonard's gaze quickly swept over Kornli, who was smoking his third cigarette nearby. His face remained expressionless, as if he were carrying out a mission, consuming the cigarette in his hand. Klein once reported something to me, Captain Dunn said. When he was digesting the seer potion at the divination club, he had an encounter with Lanlos's fiancée and learned of her residence. Upon realizing that the bomb might be related to mysticism, I immediately thought of this possibility and made arrangements. The situation might be very urgent. In that case, I brought sealed artifact 2015, the blood vessel thief. At the entrance of 42 Gerald Street, I found the place and also discovered that in Zhangwil, the former archbishop of the Night Goddess Church, seemed to have a certain curiosity about the impending evil god's descendant. In Zhangwil, the fellow with sealed artifact, 0008, a sequence 5 gatekeeper, was also on the scene. The situation was indeed very critical. Captain Dunn took out his pipe and the tobacco Kornli had given him. However, a saint from the church was following right behind him. Our people. Everyone immediately felt relieved. That saint from the church helped us kill Majaus and the evil god in her belly, then pursued Ins Zangwil's figure into the spirit world. The evil god's descendant in Majaus's belly cursed the three of us. Klein, being closer, suffered too much damage. He needs to recuperate in the cathedral for a long time to recover, Captain Dunn said, following Kornli's script. After this incident, Kornli will be transferred to Backlund, but before that, he will go to the cathedral to accompany Klein for a while. A week at most, Kornli's lazy voice came from outside the window. Watching that guy lie down while I have to stand makes me very unhappy. Fry laughed and punched Kornli's thigh. Shi Jia and Luo Yao each reached out a hand and firmly pinched the muscle on his other leg. So, the squad will lose 2 people. Fry looked at Captain Dunn. Captain, let me explain the rest. Leonard raised his right hand. Captain Dunn nodded, said nothing more, and poured himself a cup of black coffee. My midnight poet potion has been fully digested. After what happened the day before yesterday, I've decided to pursue advancement. I will go to the cathedral to advance in 2 days and become a Red Gloves. Chapter 168. This is a huge victory. I really enjoyed my carefree time here, reading poetry collections and watching plays, but my recent experiences have taught me one thing. Only with great strength can one truly enjoy such leisurely times. Oh, no, you're all gone. Fry clutched his head, his expression pained. This is already quite good. Kornli used a little force in his legs, and his upper body squeezed through the narrow gap in the window into the room. We are all still alive. To face the offspring of an evil god, plus a former archbishop, and for the 3 of us to still be standing here discussing what just happened, I can call that a victory. Captain Dunn exhaled a smoke ring. A huge victory. The squad members exchanged glances and nodded. In the evening, Captain Dunn hosted a party for everyone at the nearby, Old Will's family restaurant. They drank all sorts of fine wines, including Intis red wine, Plateau ice wine, and Sunia blood wine, and enjoyed a large feast of delicacies such as roasted lamb chops, Leuenberg shepherd's pie, and Feinpotter seafood stew, all while chatting and laughing. After the banquet, Captain Dunn sent the drunken civilian staff and squad members onto carriages one by one. Kornli stood beside him, assisting him in getting the others who had drunk too much into the carriage compartments, sending them off one by one. Today is the last day. Captain Dunn put on his hat, his gaze flicking towards Kornli beside him. Beautiful moments should remain in memory, Captain. I believe Leonard thinks so too. Captain Dunn looked up at Leonard, who was being put into the carriage last. The latter raised his right hand and waved vigorously at them. I cooperated and finished your script. I still have a few questions, can you answer them for me? Captain Dunn looked at Kornli, his gaze serious. A good swindler never reveals his methods to the spectator, and one trick often follows another. Kornli stopped, then turned to look at Captain Dunn, who had also stopped. He took a step forward and gave Captain Dunn a tight hug. This action caught Captain Dunn off guard. He awkwardly opened his arms and gently patted Kornli's shoulder with his right hand. Goodbye, Captain. Kornli stepped back, tapped the brim of his hat with his right hand, like a gentleman bidding farewell to another gentleman, and hailed a private carriage. South Gate, out of the city. Captain Dunn silently watched Kornli leave, his cane in his right hand slowly tightening, then forcefully tapping the ground. The crimson moonlight shone on his back, casting a long shadow. Kornli took a carriage to Slot Town, which is a necessary stop between Tingen City and Backlund. Everyone traveling by carriage from Tingen City or Backlund chooses to stop here for a moment, either to enjoy a meal, let their horses rest, or stay overnight at the largest local inn, the Traveler's Wooden Table. To stay there for a night and take a hot bath to relieve all fatigue. Kornli walked into the Traveler's Wooden Table. Behind the bar stood a waiter wiping glasses. Beside the wooden tables, guests sat in 2s and 3s, enjoying food and wine. In the distant fireplace, the fire crackled. Cresta, who was drinking alone by the bar, reached out for a glass of dark beer and handed it to Kornli. Kornli sat beside him, took a large gulp of beer, and, using the raised glass to cover his mouth, whispered. Klein Moretti will be recuperating in the cathedral for a period. Without documents and relevant procedures, if anyone asks, especially Leonard Mitchell, tell him to find you and give him a plausible excuse. You mean, Mr. Leonard Mitchell is a great threat to the church? Cresta Sesama narrowed his eyes. I never said that. On the contrary, don't easily doubt his loyalty to the church. Kornli frowned. This guy is just very curious and has strong initiative. His abilities are very strong. Leonard is a giant Teletubby. Cresta nodded in understanding. Such people were not uncommon under his command. I will go to Al Hassan's squad. I know you two have always been in adjacent offices. To prevent others from suspecting our relationship, you should try to visit that office location less often. For the next few months, I will be training a new batch of Red Gloves. The relevant procedures will take several months, and this includes Mr. Leonard Mitchell. Cresta nodded. I will prepare all new documents for you, but are you sure you don't want me to put you in the Red Gloves squad? As an elite squad of the church, the Red Gloves have very high privileges. Not only can they handle tasks independently, but they can also carry holy artifacts independently. Tell Al Hassan that I occasionally need to handle some errands you give me, this will give me enough freedom. Kornli said, this is enough. This is the first thing you need to handle when you go back. Kornli tilted his head and whispered something into Cresta's left ear. I understand. Klein is in the innermost room upstairs. The room next to it is also reserved by me. I wish you a safe journey. Cresta Sesama had already understood Kornli's intention. He bent down, picked up his ever-present black leather bag from the floor, whispered, and then stood up to board the carriage that had been waiting all day at the entrance. Cresta is quite reliable in his work. Kornli picked up his beer and walked up the creaking stairs, pushed open the innermost door directly, and then locked it. Klein sat in the rocking chair by the window, watching Cresta's departing carriage with a complicated expression. From that angle, he could also see himself getting out of the carriage. Next to the rocking chair were several white papers, with crooked, scribbled handwriting confirming they were from Kornli's hand. Are you all right? Kornli placed the beer glass on the edge of the white paper. Klein stood up with a grim face and powerfully punched Kornli's left cheek with his right fist. Kornli didn't dodge, not even showing the slightest intention to dodge. Why? Klein looked at Kornli, who had a natural expression and a trickle of blood at the corner of his mouth, then collapsed to the ground, clutching his head. You know everything, and you know the reasons why I did these things, but what you can't get past is that high threshold in your heart. Kornli sat opposite him, wiping the corner of his mouth with his right hand. That's kinship, my dear Klein. Chapter 169. Klein, eat my fist, Kornli. What do you want me to do? I know a lot. For example, you have some magical powers, and even being shot isn't a huge deal for you. But if the captain and your family found out about this, what would you become? Kornli whispered. Don't forget our identities. Klein wasn't stupid, and he quickly understood the meaning behind Kornli's words. If he were resurrected, Melissa and Benson would certainly regard him as a monster. In this world, such an event would be reported to the police station or the church. At that point, every cell in his body would be dissected like a lab rat. Including his thoughts and his soul. Even if the captain and the others could tolerate his existence, would they abandon him when he encountered danger? Damn it, there were too many possibilities. Melissa and Benson are currently. Klein raised his head, looking apologetically at Kornli. Although he already knew everything from Kornli's script, he still wanted to hear news about his family directly from Kornli. Melissa is very sad, and so is Benson, but compared to our other decisions, they have essentially accepted the reality, Kornli said. Next September, Melissa will enroll in the mechanical engineering department at Backlund University, and Benson, encouraged by your future self, will become an excellent low-level government civil servant. Kornli laughed. You are merely recuperating from an infectious disease, but you can write letters to them. They will maintain contact with the church, so at least when they arrive in Backlund, you can secretly check on them. That sounded decent. I left them your annual salary, nearly £400, which, combined with Benson's weekly pay, should be enough to maintain the household. Plus, you can occasionally earn extra money, depending on how you operate. Kornli stood up and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Your punch was quite fierce. Sorry, Klein whispered. Thunder, rain, endure all the Emperor's grace. He said this sentence in Chinese. Kornli, stop reminding me constantly that I also have the identity of the fool. Get out. Klein glared angrily, slightly furrowing his brow. What the hell did you make me drink? It was formulated by an apothecary. That medicine makes you look terrifying, as if cursed, and keeps you unconscious. But after drinking the antidote, you'll be fine in 3 days at most. You really don't want to know what was put inside. Kornli refused Klein's attempt to pry further. He had seen what the dead fatty put into the medicine when he was mixing it. Various black powders, animal limbs, and some truly disgusting smelling things. God knows how the apothecary knew these anti-human recipes. Here, take this. Kornli pulled a bottle of white antidote from his pocket. I prepared enough antidote. This is the last bottle, and drinking it guarantees you'll be fine. After drinking this stuff, I have to go to the bathroom 6 times a day. Klein complained as he took the potion and downed it in one gulp. So you think the antidote shouldn't go through the lower passage, but through the upper one instead? Kornli muttered. What kind of blasphemous, rebellious thought is that? Klein glared angrily again, rubbing his rumbling stomach. It's a shame. All my clothes were left in Tingen City, and buying new ones will cost money. Plus, you gave Melissa and Benson nearly £400. Fortunately, I still have Miss Justice's £300 in my account, and you should have a few £100 in cash we can use. Klein calculated and nodded. In renting a place, we need a foothold, which will be a huge expense. Kornli looked at Klein with a half smile. Also, my swindler potion is completely digested. This means we need to buy new potions, both yours and mine. Digested? That quickly? Klein widened his eyes. Yes, I just tricked the true creator's descendant and acted as his father for over an hour. Kornli looked leisurely out at the cosmos. Awesome. Then in your memories. Klein pointed at his brain, and Kornli nodded. My brain has gained some scenes of Lanlo's deceiving people, images, and some memories that shouldn't be there. This is very uncomfortable for me, but fortunately, a psychiatrist is about to be born within the Tarot Club. I must be very careful when using the distortion bracelet in the future. If unnecessary, I should try to use it as little as possible. During the nights over the past 2 days, Kornli was frequently startled awake by certain scenes in his dreams, which caused him great distress. Klein nodded understandingly, suddenly clutched his stomach, and quickly rushed into the toilet. Thankfully, it was still traveling through the lower passage this time. Kornli, you shouldn't have made me think about that. 10 minutes later, the exhausted Klein walked out of the room and suddenly realized there were 2 extra people inside. They were Miss Grace, Kornli's messenger, and Mr. Isaac Eggers. That's the first time I've seen Klein look so miserable. Mr. Isaac smiled, reached out, and pulled 3 long, black cigars from a spatial rift. I need to thank both of you. Mr. Isaac gently cut the tips off the cigars and handed one each to Klein and Kornli. Miss Grace rubbed her hands together, and 3 small blue-green fireballs emerged from her fingers, floating in front of the 3 people. This was the first time Kornli had used soul fire to light a cigarette. Smoking it felt like lighting a cigarette using someone else's soul. He looked no different from a major villain in a movie. Did you catch that fellow in Zhangwil? Klein asked weakly, leaning on the bed. That fellow can live for 2 more days. Mr. Isaac took a deep drag of his cigar, and the fingernail of his left hand sliced a rift in the air, from which a withered human arm dropped out. This is his left hand. I heard that mechanical technology is quite advanced now. Perhaps he can replace it with a mechanically manufactured arm. Kornli blew a round smoke ring from his mouth and gently pushed it with his hand. Perhaps Trier in Intis has this technology. That place is the headquarters of the Church of the God of Steam and Machinery. Let him live for 2 months first. Mr. Isaac waved his hand and put the arm away. I will let him know the kind of suffering he will face for taking my son's head. In Zhangwil, that poor child. Kornli and Klein exchanged glances and simultaneously pursed their lips. Regardless, I should thank the 2 of you. Mr. Isaac stood up and bowed solemnly to Kornli and Klein. The 2 of you risked your lives to create this opportunity for me. For this, I am deeply grateful. He pulled out the quill of Alzuhad from his pocket, the latter lay lazily in his palm, showing no desire to write whatsoever. This item is your spoils of war, and it should rightfully be returned to you. I'm afraid you'll need to hold onto it for us for a while. Kornli sniffed. If the 2 of us take this thing now, we'll die very quickly. The quill of Alzuhad constantly desires to kill its holder, but that is no issue for you. Chapter 170. We protected Tingen City. We just finished dealing with an evil god. Our best choice now is to rest quietly for a while, not to choke on a glass of milk while eating breakfast. Klein Moretti said weakly, leaning against the headboard. His stomach rumbled again. Damn it, how many more times will this happen? What's wrong with him? Mr. Isaac Eggers asked Kornli suspiciously. The detoxification process, Kornli replied. The question you asked involves botany, zoology, pharmacology, and mysticism. I don't even know where to begin explaining it. He'll be fine, he'll just have to run to the washroom a few extra times. Mr. Isaac Eggers nodded, half understanding. In that case, I'll hold on to this for now. Come to me if you need it. This little thing is quite interesting. Only you could call a sequence 0 sealed artifact an interesting little thing. During your battle, I should have come out a few minutes earlier, but 2 minutes before I was ready to emerge, I noticed a man preparing a ritual in a house on the street adjacent to yours. A spark of firefly light appeared on Mr. Isaac Eggers's right index finger, tracing a ritual pattern in the air. Although the ritual pattern wasn't entirely clear, Klein, who had some minor research into mysticism, still recognized the object of the man's prayer. Flesh, filth, birth, that's a ritual to summon the surrounding flesh. Klein identified the symbols on it. He intended to send enough flesh to that evil god, but he didn't expect Mr. Isaac Eggers to discover him. What a pitiful fellow. A prayer ritual directed at the true creator. Kornli's expression darkened. Damn it, I knew that bastard Mr. Z wasn't dead yet. I don't understand. The last person he possessed was Archbishop Gendel Downs, but Archbishop Gendel was killed by you, Klein Moretti said. That guy must have used possession, or maybe he left a part of his body outside. In short, as long as his spirit wasn't damaged, all he needs is a long period of recovery time, Kornli said. Your mysticism knowledge is excellent, Mr. Isaac Eggers praised. It saves me from having to explain a lot of things. There is one thing you need to know. Before the Fourth Epoch, many churches were built next to cemeteries. Most of the church builders were hereditary, and they knew exactly how to avoid contamination from below when expanding the church. During every expansion, all the ground had to be sprinkled with holy water. This, combined with the daily prayers of the believers in the church, ensured that the little skeletons beneath the church wouldn't suddenly decide to cause trouble. However, planning and execution are often not handled by the same person. Sometimes, or rather, most of the time, orders get misinterpreted. Mr. Isaac Eggers made a gesture of exasperation. What happened to that guy later? Kornli looked at Mr. Isaac Eggers, who shook his head casually. I grabbed something from the underworld and defiled his ritual with it, the very subtle kind. This news needs to be reported to Captain Dunn as soon as possible, Kornli nodded. When that fellow prayed, the backlash effect should be quite strong. Mr. Isaac Eggers calculated for a moment, then nodded definitively. He won't be able to get out of bed for at least a week. Kornli and Klein Moretti both smiled simultaneously. Mr. Isaac Eggers's method was somewhat similar to Kornli's approach. Where are the two of you planning to go next? Backlund, Kornli replied. I will still serve in the Nighthawks, small N team under the Night Goddess Church, but I will have more freedom than before. Klein Moretti, on the other hand, will enjoy complete freedom. A wise choice. Oh, there's one more thing you need to know. Kornli nodded to Klein Moretti, who then informed Mr. Isaac Eggers in detail about the man in the mirror. Mr. Isaac Eggers shifted his posture on the sofa. Why? Kornli opened the window, allowing the cigar smoke in the room to drift out. I don't know, but this should be a massive conspiracy. If you encounter a similar incident, please let me know. The two of you can write to me. I will be traveling around Backlund for a while, specifically near the Mian Sik Mountains, Mr. Isaac Eggers said. I recently recovered a sliver of my previous memory, and if I recall correctly, I think I left something in a cave there. Congratulations to you, this is a good thing. Klein Moretti raised the water glass next to him. Congratulations. Mian Sik Mountains. Kornli suddenly realized that one of the ingredients for his swindler potion, bewitching worm swarm larva, was found by Belter Parkson in the Mian Sik Mountains. The cryptologist potion formula requires the adult bewitching smog and its mucus. Would they be found there too? Mr. Isaac Eggers, when you are exploring the Mian Sick Mountains, would it be convenient for you to help me search for the adult bewitching smog and its mucus? They are essential components for my next sequence potion, Kornli asked. All right, Mr. Isaac Eggers nodded. How much mucus do you need? 10 drops. Mr. Isaac Eggers nodded toward Grace beside him, and she nodded back to Kornli, saying, I will bring it to you immediately once I find it. It's getting late. Mr. Isaac Eggers looked at Klein Moretti, whose expression was pained on the bed. I think you should probably go to the bathroom for the second time. Excuse me. Klein Moretti quickly got up, rushed straight into the washroom, and slammed the door shut with a loud clang, locking it tightly. Truly worthy of being the king of the washroom, even closing a door is done with such imposing momentum. Please notify us after Ins Zangwil dies. Kornli and Mr. Isaac Eggers stood up simultaneously, their hands clasped tightly. I will save you a spot at the scene, Mr. Isaac Eggers promised. Mr. Isaac Eggers pulled, and a man-height spatial rift appeared in the air of the room. He nodded to Kornli and entered first, holding his cane. Good night, Mr. Kornli. Please say goodbye to Mr. Klein Moretti for me. Miss Grace nodded farewell to Kornli, then followed Mr. Isaac Eggers into the spatial rift. Being able to travel through the spirit world is truly enviable. Thursday morning, 9 o'clock, Tingen City, Nighthawk's team headquarters. Dunn Smith walked into his office, hung his cane and top hat on the coat rack near the door, and habitually leaned back in his reclining chair. The adjacent team office was exceptionally quiet. There was no Leonard Mitchell's morning poetry session, no Kornli's routine of distributing snacks, no Klein Moretti's morning greetings, and no sound of old Neil joking with the clerical staff. Although Dunn spent most of his day in his own office, the sounds from the team member's office were always in his ears. For him, those were the sounds he loved to listen to every day. Tap, tap, tap. A familiar set of footsteps came from outside, heading straight into his office. Why are you here? Dunn hid the smile on his lips, sat up straight, and looked at Daily Simone, who was standing before him without eyeshadow, her hair normally draped over her shoulders, and a smile in the corners of her eyes. Does the church have business? Or are there arrangements in Tingen City? Captain Dunn instinctively thought of this possibility. Does the team need to deploy? Daily Simone looked amusedly at the man she liked standing before her. The church is fine. It's just that your team is temporarily short 4 people, and Tingen City has had several major incidents recently, so the church sent me over to help the team guard Tingen City for a while. So, nothing was wrong. How long will you be staying this time? That depends on how I write my report, my dear Captain Dunn. Daily Simone smiled as she stood up. I'm going to go say hello to everyone. She slowly rose, leaving Captain Dunn with a graceful figure and a slight, girlish smile playing on her lips. Volume 1, Tingen City, End. Chapter 171, First Day in Backlund. Backlund, Southern District, 42 Gilbert Street. Your house. Kornli opened the door and placed the key in Klein's hand. Go check out your main base in Backlund. Klein looked at the key in his hand. So, when you came to Backlund last time, you settled on a house in just a few hours. Don't joke. Kornli shook his head. I clearly settled on 2 houses, otherwise, where would I live? You know we can't live in the same house, it would arouse suspicion. That's true, but couldn't you express it less ambiguously? My house is at 10 Crescesses Street, 2 blocks away. Kornli seemed to realize something and awkwardly rubbed his nose. It's only a 5-minute walk from Al Hassan's office, which is also my office. There's a basement there with an exit to the outside, and 2 large trees covering it. I admit, coming over for a meal is fun, but do you have to make it so covert? I'll leave the rest to you. The day after tomorrow, Monday evening, after the Tarot Club meeting, my furniture should have all arrived. You can come over for dinner. Kornli calculated. I'll make panji and hand-pulled noodles. Panji, hand-pulled noodles. Klein couldn't help but swallow. Good night, dear Klein. Kornli waved goodbye to Klein and walked north for 10 minutes, passing between 2 houses to reach his own doorstep. Hey, Kornli, is that really you? A carriage stopped at the door, and Captain Al Hassan jumped out, giving him a strong hug. Yes, it's really me. Kornli said with feigned helplessness. The cathedral assigned me to your team. I think it must be Senior Deacon Crestet's insistence. He always hopes to have some talented people under him, and you are undoubtedly someone he values. Captain Al looked at the house at 10 Crescesses Street. Is this the house you rented? Yes, £3 a week. The rent prices in Backlund are practically robbery, and even higher in the southern district. Kornli spread his hands. All the money I earn goes into it. I hope the weekly salary in Backlund will be a bit higher. Of course, that's not a problem. Everyone in the team gets a housing subsidy, which is completely different from Tingen City. Al followed Kornli into the house, looking around. The room was empty except for 2 beds and 2 chairs. Al Hassan nodded. That's terrible, you don't even have a quilt to sleep with tonight. He took out his pocket watch. It was already 3 in the afternoon, 2 hours before the Backlund Furniture Rental Company closed. Follow me. Al Hassan took Kornli in a private carriage directly to a familiar furniture rental company in the northern district of Backlund. Hey, Walker, over here. Al Hassan casually pushed aside the attendant who came to greet them and whistled at their boss. Al Hassan, damn it, what are you doing here? Although Walker Griffin said that, he quickly slid down the stairs from the 2nd floor and gave Al a warm hug. My new colleague, Mr. Kornli White. Al extended his hand to introduce him. He just arrived in Backlund, just rented a house, and doesn't even have a quilt. That's terrible, it's a disaster. Walker shook his head. A huge disaster. Come with me. Walker looked at Al Hassan. The same specifications as the team station. Maximum reimbursement. Al nodded without hesitation. He's all yours. After saying that, he turned and left, not giving Kornli a chance to explain. It's fine, he knows I'll explain it clearly to you. Follow me. Walker patted Kornli's shoulder and led him towards a huge warehouse in the back. I know who you are. My brother, Hull Griffin, used to serve in the Nighthawks team. Later, he went south. I don't know where he is now, but from his letters, he seems to be living happily. So that's how it was, a trustworthy insider. All the furniture in the team is leased, but if you're going to live in Backlund long-term, I can offer you installment purchases, interest-free. And Al can directly transfer your housing subsidy to me. He mentioned this to you, right? Walker paused, watching Kornli nod, and responded with a satisfied nod. That's right, your subsidies can be directly deducted here because this is also part of the Night Goddess Church's property. Just have the accountants process it. The prices are all cost price, absolutely cost price. Walker pushed open the warehouse door. The mountains of new and used furniture dazzled Kornli's 50-degree, Kajin Goyan. Please choose freely. 2 bedrooms. You're living alone. Change one into a study. Walker took out a notebook and skillfully offered suggestions to Kornli. 2 bathrooms. Damn, I didn't even know that house at 10 Crescesses Street had such a luxurious layout, and a basement too. What do you want to change the basement into? I can turn it into a dungeon, or an underground casino, or if you want to have some unknown affairs with a few women or men, that's all possible, as long as you remember to pay. Walker winked at Kornli. This is the city of 10,000 capitals, after all. Kornli, confused, stopped Walker's suggestions. I hope to add an extra bed so that temporary team members can rest well, and the other room upstairs should be converted into a study for me to read in. So, that's all. Walker looked at Kornli's requests in his notebook. You did pick out quite a lot of tableware. I like to cook myself, it's cleaner that way. Hey, you guys, come over here. Prepare 2 of the largest carriages. We have a very nice house to decorate, and it must be done before dark. Walker shouted into the distance. 4 workers ran over. The foreman, who was leading them, took the order from Walker's hand and nodded. The 4 quickly found suitable furniture from various corners and moved it onto a flatbed carriage. They are the best workers. Don't worry about the price, I'll send the bill to Al tomorrow. Walker patted Kornli's shoulder. He knows how to get it reimbursed. This was practically a one-stop shop for production and sales. 4 hours later, Kornli sat on his brand new living room sofa, looking at the bright gas lamp, and contentedly raised the coffee in his hand. They even included the coffee powder in the moving expenses. Chapter 172, Is this a leisurely department? Klein found a pencil and a barely writable piece of paper on the only table in the room, and began to write and draw. He had a house, and a year's rent had been paid, but as a grown man, food and some purchases were still necessary. He also needed to advance, requiring enough money to buy mystical items. Furthermore, his clothes hadn't been brought over, so he needed some money to buy new formal wear, a tailcoat, and a top hat. In short, he needed to find a way to improve his earning ability. The further away the title of "Poor God" was from him, the better. Klein pulled out his money pouch, taking out banknotes and coins. He still had £97 and 12 pence, and £300 from Miss Justice in the bank. If he lived normally and wasn't extravagant, this money could last him half a year, or even a year or two. However, his life was full of danger, requiring not only his abilities but also some opportunities. Some opportunities needed to be created by himself. Moreover, his identity absolutely could not be exposed, otherwise, relevant people like Kornli, high-ranking Deacon Cresta Cizima, and possibly Captain Dunn, would all be very awkward. That day, after the battle, when he drank the potion, a scene flashed in Klein's mind. Although Captain Dunn hadn't said anything, and the potion he drank at the time was hidden in his right palm, in the scene in his mind, Captain Dunn turned and glanced in his direction. Captain Dunn knew something but didn't say it. Kornli probably also knew that Captain Dunn knew, but both tacitly kept silent. Now, I know too. So, how should he earn money? He needed a job, but this job couldn't restrict his actions. An 8-hour-a-day desk job was definitely not suitable for him. If he had to leave urgently, he might get fired and even not receive his weekly salary. As a modern person, this kind of thankless job definitely couldn't be chosen. He held the Backlund Honest Man's newspaper, and in the small job advertisement squares on the 4th page, he screened them one by one, finally narrowing his job scope to 3 categories. The first was a reporter, not one dedicated to a specific newspaper, but a freelance reporter who chased news. This type of reporter was considered the lowest tier in the high-risk profession of journalism. Although they didn't need to write articles in a fixed location, it also meant no minimum wage, only news subsidies. Such subsidies might not even be enough for a private carriage. The second was a writer, plagiarizing novels from his memory, such as The Count of Monte Cristo. This was a good option, but he couldn't become famous. Once famous, it would go against his idea of hiding his identity. This wouldn't work either. The third was a private detective. It seemed only this one was somewhat reliable. Well, since he had chosen this profession, this room needed to be arranged, and he also needed appropriate attire. Klein meticulously listed the things he should buy on the paper, took a sip of milk, and, dissatisfied, added coffee and sugar, 2 essential items, back onto the paper. The next morning, Kornli arrived at 40 Kensal Street, the Orlandon Interpersonal Relationship Processing Center, at 9 o'clock. The receptionist at the door saw Mr. Kornli White, dressed in hunting attire and wearing a flat cap, walk in, and stood up to shake his hand warmly. "Mr. Kornli White, this is our second meeting. I am Angela Ellis, the team's clerical staff. It's a pleasure to be your teammate." Angela Ellis had long, smooth golden hair, a gentle look in her light blue eyes, a warm right hand, and a unique, irresistible feminine charm in her words. "Hello." Kornli gently shook Angela's hand. She then led Kornli to the team's room. On the table next to Captain Al's, there was an unopened box of David Dust brand cigarettes. "This is a gift from Captain Al," Angela said with a smile. "I hope I didn't buy the wrong one." "No, thank you," Kornli said with a smile. "A very thoughtful gift. You've met everyone in the room, so I won't introduce them further. There are 2 more clerical staff members. Melanie Allison will come in the evening, she's used to the night shift. We also have a part-time clerical staff member, also the former clerical staff, Molly Williams. She's getting married soon, so she hasn't been coming in much lately." Kornli nodded. The setup here was very simple. No armory, no archive, and no need to guard the Chinese gate. It was a very simple team. Weapons and bullets are in the bottom right drawer of the captain's desk. There are 20 exorcism bullets, and enough regular bullets. If you need to view archives, you can go to the basement of the Serenity Church. Centuries of archives are stored there. The alchemy room also uses the basement of the Serenity Church. If you need anything else, you can always tell me. Angela nodded gently. "I won't take up any more of your time." Gentle, quiet, and methodical in her work, truly a qualified clerical staff member. Kornli watched Angela leave, and then heard Captain Al's familiar footsteps approaching the door. "You're here so early." Captain Al frowned, looking at the cigarettes and matches Kornli pushed over. "Did you have to report to the team at 9 o'clock every day in Tingen City?" Kornli nodded, asking in surprise, "It's not like that here." "No, not at all." Captain Al slapped his head, pulled a map of Backlund from his drawer, and pointed at it. "This is our location. Do you see anything?" Kornli looked at the south borough where he was located. To the left was the Hillsden borough, which housed the Backlund Stock Exchange, Clearing House, Futures Center, headquarters of the 7 major banks, various trust funds, various railway companies, and various bulk commodity trading companies. To the right was the Cherwood borough, where the environment was slightly inferior and rent was slightly cheaper. He shook his head. Hillsden borough is always busy. There are a large number of police officers stationed here, and police carriages patrol the roads daily, so public order is very good. Although the Cherwood borough on the right is a bit worse, those damned Aurora Order members, or other organizations, wouldn't choose to cause trouble in this district because the population is sparse and the cost is too high. Even if something happens, it might not be discovered for 2 or 3 days. The East Borough, Dock area, or North Borough and Bridge area are where they cause trouble. The East Borough, Dock area, or North Borough and Bridge area are where they cause trouble. In summary, it's mostly idle here. So, this was a leisurely department, very suitable for retirement. Kornli nodded. At this moment, Angela walked in. "Boss, you need to go to the Backlund City Bank. There's been a robbery there." "Huh, leisurely." Kornli raised an eyebrow at Al Hassan. Chapter 173, A Bunch of Lunatics. "Dear Captain Al, what did you just say?" "Idle." Kornli's expression was noticed by Al Hassan, who shook his head helplessly. "Just pretend you didn't hear anything." "No, that's absolutely impossible. I'll get a small notebook and write it down, item by item." "Okay, Captain." Kornli nodded obediently. After all, it was his first day reporting for duty, he still needed to put on a show. "Wait, Miss Angela just said it was a bank robbery. That should be a police matter, so why are we, the Nighthawks squad, being dispatched?" "Dear Miss Angela, since when does the Night Goddess Church have to worry about bank robberies?" Captain Al gave Angela an innocent look. Are the police officers not even handling these matters anymore? Quote, good question. Boss, the robbed bank is Backlund City Bank. The bank manager, Steve Nelson, is a loyal believer of the church, and Angela spoke halfway, and Captain Al nodded helplessly. "I still owe that guy a favor. Moreover, the situation on site is quite chaotic. You'll understand once you're there," Miss Angela said. That guy actually used the word, chaotic. Captain Al rubbed his nose. "That's a new one. Please go find Miguel Henderson. That guy should be in a brothel right now, or rather, in the bed of a certain lady in the red light district, or perhaps in the bed of a certain baroness, or a popular dancer." Captain Al's voice grew softer and softer under Angela's icy gaze. "Captain, you want a lady to go to a certain lady's home in Backlund to find a philandering man. It would probably take at least 10 days to half a month to find him. Anyway, when he arrives, tell him to go directly to Backlund City Bank to find us." According to her usual habits, Madame Luoluoda won't be at work for another hour. Please notify her as well. Captain Al sighed heavily, looking at Kornli's amused face with self-resignation. "Although you're supposed to start working tomorrow, you'll come to the scene with me, right? It seems I'm your only choice, Captain." Kornli nodded silently. Today counts as overtime, double pay. Getting a day's labor for just double pay was incredibly cheap compared to the other members of the squad. "Good, we'll take the police carriage downstairs. You still have your police detective identification, right?" "Excellent." Captain Al sighed again. "Aside from you and me, the members of my squad are all more or less unique." Kornli went downstairs and voluntarily took on the task of driving the carriage. Captain Al sat beside him, pulling out a rolled cigarette and offering it to him. "Why does Miss Angela call you, boss?" "Ever since Miguel joined the squad, everyone's started calling me that, but I don't really care." Captain Al lit his rolled cigarette and took a deep puff. "As you can see, this squad includes 2 problem teenagers, so titles and such are minor issues. A nightmare, who occasionally forgets what he remembers. A gravedigger, who loves coffee and has a large chest. 8. Detective, who often sleeps in different women's beds, plus himself, burdened with a pile of secrets. This truly is an unusual squad. Wait, detective. Kornli vaguely remembered that this should be a sequence of the White Tower, belonging to the god of knowledge and wisdom. Why would there be a sequence 7 feet detective, belonging to the god of knowledge and wisdom, in the Nighthawk's squad, which is subordinate to the Evernight Goddess Church? Mr. Miguel Henderson is a detective. I remember there's no potion related to this sequence in the Night Goddess Church, Kornli asked curiously. Sigh. Captain Al sighed again. When he arrives later, let him tell you himself. Quote. Okay, boss. Kornli nodded. This title suited Al Hassan's temperament better. The carriage slowly stopped at the entrance of Backlund City Bank. Steve Nelson, dressed in a tuxedo and sporting a small mustache, anxiously rubbed his hands. Seeing Al Hassan and Kornli alight from the carriage, he jogged over to them. Praise the goddess, you're finally here. Praise the goddess, what happened? Al Hassan unhurriedly picked up his cane from the rack in the carriage, looking at the panic-stricken Steve Nelson. They had known each other for 3 years, and Captain Al had never seen such a panicked expression on Steve Nelson's face. Even a year ago, when his wife divorced him, his face remained calm and composed, as if it were merely a trivial matter. Steve Nelson licked his lips, I can't explain it clearly. The Southern District Police Department has already been here, and they said this kind of thing is best handled by you. Although I wanted to hand this matter over to the Lord of Steam and Machinery Church, considering our acquaintance, I trust you more. Follow me. While bank robberies were indeed rare in Backlund, no, even in the entire LotM Kingdom, they were rare, but robberies themselves should be quite common. Kornli followed Captain Al into the bank. A long cordon had already been set up at the bank's entrance, and 4 guards, armed with rapiers and pistols at their waists, watched passers-by with vigilant eyes, as if they would rush out and shoot any suspicious person the next second. Don't worry about them, these guards are incredibly remorseful. Steve Nelson shook his head. This is the first time the main branch of Backlund City Bank has been robbed in the 27 years since its opening. 2 or 3 bank employees stopped what they were doing and greeted Steve as he passed. Steve Nelson, who would usually politely stop and return the greeting, seemed to have forgotten his customary manners, merely hurrying Captain Al inside. How many pounds have you lost? Captain Al asked, still checking and tallying. Steve Nelson shook his head, bypassing all the guards and staff, and led them directly to the vault door on the basement floor. See for yourselves. The bronze metal door of the vault, over 10 inches thick, was open. Kornli looked inside. Opposite the entrance, where theoretically the entire vault should have been, was a whole wall, weighing several tons, composed of safes 50 centimeters high, 50 centimeters long, and 1 meter deep. Now, before everyone, was a huge empty space. These thieves didn't choose to steal things from inside the vault, they stole the entire vault. Literally. I told you, I can't explain it clearly. Steve Nelson clutched his head, speaking in agony. These lunatics. Quote. Chapter 174, Miguel Henderson, a famous Backlund figure. What the heck? Kornli looked at the wall, speechless. Al Hassan was equally speechless. He licked his lips and instinctively pulled a rolled cigarette from his pocket. No open flames in the vault. Steve Nelson instinctively stopped him. Al Hassan pointed his right index finger forward. His meaning was self-evident. No open flames were allowed in the vault because there might be valuable documents, certificates, or any paper items that could easily catch fire. Now, only the vault door remained. Then, please give me one too. Steve Nelson said dejectedly. Kornli lit a match, lit the cigarettes for the other 2, and then lit his own. 3 faint lights flickered outside the vault door. A minute later, Captain Al looked at Kornli. My dear Kornli, can you offer some constructive advice? Kornli looked at the thick granite in front of him, opening his thumbs and index fingers to form 2 pistols, and observing it carefully as if with a camera. The method used to cut the safe was extremely precise, as accurate as a ruler. The entire wall had a safe-sized hole dug out, so precise it was comparable to the accuracy of laser measurements in later generations. Precise. Kornli seemed to grasp something. How many safes were there in total? Kornli asked. 60 on each floor, 5 floors in total, making 300, Steve Nelson quickly replied. 179 of them were in use, and our clients include several duchesses, various lords from the upper house and lower house, and dozens of the most famous merchants in the Loan Kingdom. Please, you must find the contents before they find out. Steve Nelson plopped to his knees. If any of them find out, I will die. I'm not afraid of death, but my family is innocent. Those guys could very well have their subordinates mercilessly kill my family with a single word. My second wife just got pregnant last month. Steve Nelson knelt on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. A hurried footsteps came from upstairs. Kornli looked towards the stairs and saw a young man, wearing only a white shirt and brown trousers, with blonde hair tied simply into a ponytail with a pink ribbon at the back of his head, running down quickly. This was the man he had bumped into when he left Al Hassan's office during his last visit to Backlund. Is he Miguel Henderson? Kornli, this is Miguel Henderson, Captain Al Hassan added from the side. Oh, no, no, no. Miguel Henderson knelt on the ground, his eyes filled with despair, looking at the empty vault before him. My collection, my souvenirs, everything. When I rented this safe, you promised me that this was the safest place in the world. Why? Miguel grabbed Steve's collar with both hands, roaring angrily. This guy is also a user of the safe. The latter looked at Miguel helplessly, his eyes revealing an expression of utter despair. Miguel, what did you lose? Captain Al asked curiously from the side. Souvenirs from 87 dear ladies, 142 love letters, and all those beautiful memories. Miguel sighed to the heavens. That was my youth, my everything. Pa, this idiot has such hobbies. This guy is going to be my colleague. Miguel, this is our new colleague, Mr. Kornli White. Al Hassan helplessly introduced the two. Kornli, this is a member of our team, Backlund's disgrace, Miguel Henderson. Backlund's disgrace. From a man's perspective, this guy should be considered a Casanova. Hello, Mr. Miguel Henderson. Kornli extended his right hand and pulled Miguel up from the ground. Let's solve the case first. I believe your things are completely worthless in the eyes of the thieves. Precisely because of that, they will mercilessly discard or destroy these things. Miguel wiped a tear from the corner of his eye. If they were valuable jewelry, or title deeds and documents, they would carefully protect them, and we would still have a chance to get them back. As expected of a detective, what he said makes a lot of sense. Kornli was speechless for a moment. Click, click, click. Familiar footsteps of long boots. Kornli turned his head and greeted Lotta, who was still sleepy and had black-brown hair. Aren't you supposed to report tomorrow? Madame Luoluota extended her right hand and gently shook Kornli's. So today counts as overtime. Overtime. Hey, the boss probably couldn't find anyone else, Lotta said with a chuckle. What do you need me to do? In the team, I usually only handle work related to spirits and corpses. Please leave finding clues to the guy next to you. Please take our dear director Steve Nelson upstairs. We need all the information on the safe users and to know as much as possible what was inside, Captain Al said. All right, boss. Go to work, Miguel, or I'll dock your weekly pay. Captain Al sighed. You're really an embarrassment to the team. The words, dock your weekly pay, seemed to hit a nerve with Miguel. He stood up energetically, showing no trace of the despair he had displayed earlier, which had been even worse than Director Steve's. Yes, boss. In front of the new guy, could you please not use words like, dock pay? It's very hurtful. Miguel gave Captain Al a helpless look and extended his hand to Kornli. So, colleague. Kornli nodded. If you have time, I'd very much like to exchange experiences on getting along with women. His eyes reddened slightly. Aha, my brother, don't worry, I am a very selfless person, as long as a little bit of pound, a little bit. Miguel heard the words he most wanted to hear in his life and couldn't help but become smug. He casually pulled out a magnifying glass that barely fit into his pocket, held it to his eyes, and instantly transformed into a well-trained hyena, meticulously searching for traces below. Captain Al gave Kornli a wink, and the two went to a distant corner of the wall. Got an idea? Kornli nodded. I can try to analyze it. Chapter 175, Detective Miguel's Ritual. First, we can all confirm that this is a Beander case, and the perpetrator's method is relatively advanced. At least one mystical item or sealed artifact was used, or a mid-sequence Beander or higher was involved, Kornli said thoughtfully. At the very least, I can't think of any Beander below sequence 7 who has the power to take away an entire safe, practically embedded in the rock, without being discovered. Captain Al nodded. You're right, that's a direction. Secondly, following this line of thought, generally, once they reach the mid-sequences, money is no longer as important to them. They often exchange items for the mystical items or potions they need. Even a few £1,000s wouldn't be a huge expenditure for them. Kornli paused slightly as he said this. This sentence absolutely must not be heard by a certain, true God, who is the poorest in history. Therefore, I can say with certainty that what they needed was not the money inside the safe, but the mystical items or Beander materials that might be hidden inside, perhaps even things the original owner wasn't aware of. That makes sense. Captain Al nodded again. Are there any other possibilities? Yes. Kornli rubbed his chin. This is either a theft meant to conceal their true objective, or there is another possibility. What? They stole too much. Kornli spread his hands. What? There's a possibility of stealing too much. Captain Al seemed unable to believe his ears. I'll give an example, though it might not be entirely appropriate, Kornli said. When you go to a restaurant for breakfast, sometimes you reach for coffee, but if you get slightly distracted, you end up holding a cup of orange juice instead. That does happen often, Captain Al mused. Does Kornli mean distraction? If applied to abilities, that's unlikely. After all, using spirituality to pick up one apple versus a basket of apples consumes completely different amounts of spirituality, one would definitely notice. However, if a mystical item was used, or a mystical item with the effect of a sealed artifact, then a momentary distraction leading to taking too much is possible. Does Kornli mean that the perpetrator might have used a mystical item but failed to control it properly? You mean the perpetrators are a group of new Beyonders who failed to control the sealed artifact in their hands? Yes, that's what I mean. Kornli nodded. So, either it was a mid-sequence Beander or higher who stole the money and mystical items from the safe, let's assume that for now, or it was a group of novices who, accidentally, stole the entire safe using a mystical item of the sealed artifact level. Captain Al nodded. Having this judgment before going inside at least gives us some directions we can try to search in. Kornli sighed. Based on his 2 lines of reasoning and the current clues, if Miguel could find some clues inside the vault, the direction could be determined. If there were no clues, he would have to use the most clumsy method, starting with the safe's owner, asking them about every single item inside, and hoping they were telling the truth. For every extra item, the Nighthawks team would need to consider whether it might be a mystical item. Just gathering the relevant documents and historical data would require the entire team to investigate for over a year to obtain the necessary information. Besides this, he might have 2 other clues, but he didn't want to use them until the very last moment. The first was through the Eater of Candles, black market of the Jacob family. Since it was a theft, there must be a channel for fencing the stolen goods, right? But this meant dealing with members of the Jacob family. He was currently only a swindler, not even a cryptologist, so dealing with them carried significant risks. Unless there was no other choice, he decided internally not to use this channel. The second was to ask Klein to perform a divination, but he couldn't let Klein get too involved in his activities. Klein could act in the shadows. I've found something, Miguel's voice rang out from inside. Be careful when you enter. I didn't bring much night glow grass powder, so it can only barely let you see an outline. Al Hassan and Kornli took their largest strides, entering the vault for the first time. On the single table inside, Miguel carefully pulled some bluish-green powder from his belt and sprinkled it cautiously onto the surface. A long, strip-like outline, 1 meter long and about 20 centimeters wide, appeared on the table. I think when the bank staff first opened the door this morning, they discovered the anomaly inside and immediately reported it to President Steve. And those guys from the police station informed us immediately when they saw the situation here. There's a high probability that they didn't enter the vault at all. This means the traces we are seeing now were left entirely by the thief, or at least by the last person who entered the vault, Miguel said calmly. At this moment, the confident aura emanating from him was much more fitting for a detective. The traces we see should be the only clues left by the thief. Well said, but do you have a way to let us see everything that happened. Miguel, try time retrocognition, Captain Al said. It's been less than a day, so we should be able to see something. I can try, boss, but don't get your hopes up too high. Miguel nodded. Aha, there really is a way. Miguel has a ritual that requires a lot of materials, but it can allow us to see what happened a few hours ago, though it cannot exceed 1 day, Captain Al explained. I need to go to the nearby herbalist shop to buy some materials, essential oils, and the necessary candles. Miguel held out his hand to Captain Al. 20 pounds should be enough. Where is your money? Captain Al's face twitched, but he still pulled out his wallet and took out 4 5-pound notes. You know, pursuing a Marchioness, a 10-pound necklace, paired with a proper dinner, plus a little bit of romance, costs at least 20 or 30 pounds. Miguel strode out of the basement. This guy can already dine with a Marchioness. Guard this place, prohibit anyone from entering. Captain Al called over a bank employee and instructed him to summon 2 guards to strictly watch the vault. He and Kornli walked to the office upstairs, monitoring the flow of people in the lobby below. 3 hours later, Miguel walked into the bank carrying 2 large bags of items and nodded toward Captain Al upstairs, signaling that he was ready to begin the ritual. Chapter 176, Kornli's Careful Calculations. Under the watchful eyes of the other 3, Miguel took out black and white candles, a dozen bottles of prepared essential oils, mugwort, clean mint leaves, and a brush for drawing the ritual on the ground from his bag. Wait a moment. Kornli stopped Miguel, who was about to draw the ritual between the table and the safe with the brush. Is there a problem? I want to know, how large can the range of this ritual be? Kornli asked. A room this size is pretty much the limit. Miguel stood up, estimated the size of the vault, and answered with certainty. So, placing the ritual in any corner of the room won't affect its efficacy. You could say that. Miguel had already understood Kornli's intention from their Q&A. The boss said you're a smart person who's good with his head. Where in the room do you think would be better? Kornli, what have you found again? Captain Al asked. I hope it's not what I imagine. Kornli looked around carefully, then pointed his right finger to the lower left corner of the room entrance, near the back of the table, a corner that wouldn't be noticed by others. I need your rapier, Madame Luoluota. Lotta drew her rapier from her waist and handed it to Kornli. He walked behind the table, standing firm with the rapier in his right hand. Here, and here, phew, so tired. Miguel wiped his sweat, jumping up from the floor. In 5 minutes, he had drawn a circle about 2 meters in diameter on the floor. In the center of the circle, he used mugwort, mint essential oil, and lily essential oil to draw the shape of a book. In the middle of the book, a huge single eye was depicted, the symbolic representation of the god of knowledge and wisdom. Let's begin. Miguel glanced at Kornli, who nodded. He clapped his hands lightly in front of his chest, and the 18 candles in the circle ignited with a snap, under his spiritual touch. Oh, god of knowledge and wisdom. You are the ancient deity who masters knowledge and wisdom. You are the power of knowledge, you are the power of reason, you are the god of wisdom. I implore your gaze. I need to borrow your great power. Please let me borrow your eyes, let me know what specific events have recently occurred in this room. Oh, a gentle breeze spontaneously generated within the room. Miguel's eyes slightly closed, and the huge single eye in the ritual circle slowly rose from beneath his feet to behind his head, slowly opening. The surrounding time seemed to undergo a huge change. The original location of the safes on the wall was now shrouded in shadow. A few seconds later, those safes reappeared on the wall, vaguely showing the situation from what seemed like several hours ago. Kornli, Captain Al, and Madame Luoluota carefully distinguished the changes around them. Lotta suddenly tugged Captain Al and pointed to the corner. A dark shadow emerged from the wall, making a slash in the air with its right hand, creating a spatial rift. 2 men in tailcoats walked out of the dark spatial rift. Their eyes looked at the safes, revealing a hint of excitement. Let's begin, don't waste time. The man who came out later said to the man who came out first. His right hand was missing a little finger, and a black wooden prosthetic finger was worn in its place, looking very comical. Aha, there's even sound, excellent. The first man nodded, then turned and pulled out a full-length mirror, 1 meter long, 20 centimeters wide, and over a meter high, from the spatial rift. He laboriously carried it to the table. The front of the mirror was covered by a black cloth, seemingly to conceal something. Indeed, it really is a mirror, a damned mirror. Kornli unconsciously clenched his right fist. This action, as expected, caught Captain Al's attention, and his brows furrowed slightly. The figures of the two men became severely distorted the moment the mirror appeared. Lotta shouted at Miguel in dissatisfaction. Concentrate. This isn't something I can control. Large drops of sweat dripped from Miguel's face onto the ground. Whatever they took out, that mystical item is at least a sealed artifact. My spirituality is decreasing like flowing water. Miguel spat out a few words through gritted teeth. I'll try to hold on, you hurry up. Lotta held a clipboard with white paper and a pencil in her right hand, quickly sketching the two men. But from the expression on her face, both men had ordinary faces, the kind you might encounter on the street from time to time. At this moment, the man laboriously placed the mirror on the table, while the other man stood with his arms crossed, showing no intention of helping. The man holding the mirror also made no sound asking for assistance. Just like the natural relationship between master and servant. The moment the mirror was placed on the table, Kornli forcefully stabbed Lotta's rapier into the table, at an angle identical to the mirror standing on the table. He pulled out the only dagger on him with his right hand and lightly scratched Lotta's rapier. This scratch, combined with the known length of the mirror, would give him the height of the mirror. From this, he could deduce what their target was. Very good, Kornli, truly excellent. Captain Al's eyes were filled with admiration. That's it, let's begin. The man next to him commanded. Mr. Franz, please be as quick as possible. My spirituality can only support this treasure for 2 or 3 minutes at most. The man holding the mirror said in a pleading tone. Don't worry, Tiberius, I know. Franz's tone was slightly impatient. Your contributions are seen by my lord. Ah, I hate these guys who always bring up a lord, Kornli sighed. The chaotic beliefs in this world truly leave one confused most of the time. Could you say a few more words? At least let me know which lord you worship. Upon hearing Mr. Franz's tone, Tiberius's face flushed slightly. He subtly adjusted the mirror's angle until its bottom right corner aligned with the third row of the entire safe. Their target is the middle part of the safe. Kornli calculated. The safes here were strictly arranged in order, numbers 1 to 60 at the bottom, 61 to 120 in the middle, then 121 to 180, and so on. The safe they were looking for was in the middle row. Kornli nodded. This way, the target could be narrowed down further. Tiberius held the mirror, carefully lifting a corner of the black cloth. A trace of blood appeared in his eyes. The mirror's reflection simultaneously showed 20 safes. 3 seconds later, a drop of fresh blood dripped from Tiberius's right eye onto the ground, and the 20 safes on the wall completely vanished. They were transferred into the mirror. Chapter 177. Mine, all mine. Although Captain Al and Lotta were mentally prepared, they were still greatly surprised by the scene that unfolded. This is simply too convenient. You can steal things just by shining a light on them, and from the tone of the man named Tiberius, this item only consumes the spirituality within him, which can recover over time. If this mirror wasn't so large, it would practically be a holy relic for a marauder. Steal whatever you want. Kornli's eyes showed a hint of envy. All right, put it down. Franz walked over. Let me help you. A hint of coldness and indifference appeared in his eyes. Standing next to Tiberius, he reached out and used the ink bottle on the table to prop up one corner of the mirror. With Tiberius's slightly grateful gaze, he forcefully pulled back the black cloth completely. All the safes in the vault appeared completely within the mirror. No, Mr. Franz, no, you can't do this, you can't. Tiberius watched Franz in a panic and took a step back. The greed for spirituality emanated from the mirror's surface. His hands were firmly stuck to the mirror, and one by one, the safes disappeared from the real world, transferred into the mirror. Hold on, Tiberius, you only need to hold on for a few seconds. A telepathist has enough spirituality, you can do it. Franz's eyes were full of smiles. There's enough money and jewelry in here, and possibly even sealed artifacts. This is exactly what we need. Hold on, yes, hold on. Tiberius's muscles grew weaker and weaker. The mirror had completely drained his spirituality and, as a last resort, began absorbing his soul, his flesh, everything. The last safe was transferred inside. Franz covered the mirror with the black cloth and gently touched Tiberius, who had already become a pile of white bones, only supporting the mirror by instinct. I told you, we would always succeed. He gently picked up the mirror with his right hand, put it back into the dark spatial rift, and then took out a broom from it. He put Tiberius's ashes into a bag and finally, according to his memory, rearranged the position of the ink bottle. Kornli and Captain Al watched Franz do all of this with cold eyes. He looked like an experienced thief, leaving no trace at the scene. This guy would never have imagined that Miguel's time reversal ritual would replay all his actions before everyone. He stuffed the bag containing Tiberius's ashes into the spatial rift, then turned to look at the tidy room and the large hole in the wall where there had once been 300 safes, now only a pile of granite and cement. Goodbye. He took off his hat, bowed deeply to the empty room as if taking a curtain call, and turned to enter the spatial rift. The black shadow, which had remained silent throughout, floated over, closed the spatial rift, and disappeared back into the wall it had come from. Who? Miguel exhaled heavily, his left hand on his chest, his right thumb, middle, and ring fingers forming the shape of an eye, muttering to himself. Praise the almighty knowledge. This appeared to be the unique gesture of the god of knowledge and wisdom. Praise the goddess. Kornli, Captain Al, and Ms. Lotta simultaneously drew 4 dots of starlight on their chests, ending the time reversal ritual. Damn it, he's so creative. Miguel sat in the middle of the ritual, picked up his water bottle, and gulped down the now cold coffee, easing his exhaustion. My spirituality is almost at rock bottom. All I have left today is physical strength, Miguel complained. If the boss could generously provide a big meal, I could try to keep working. I'll go find a suitable mirror. Lotta handed the white paper to Captain Al, took the rapier Kornli offered her, and walked upstairs. How did you think of a mirror? Captain Al looked at Kornli with a questioning gaze. I didn't think of it. This case is related to a previous case of ours. Kornli looked left and right, whispering, this environment isn't suitable for discussing such matters. Captain Al nodded. There were many things in the Nighthawks world that were not suitable for public discussion. The news of Kornli joining this team was personally told to him by Senior Deacon Crestet, and Dunsmith had also sent him a telegram. Although it seemed like a simple team member transfer, based on his understanding of Dunsmith, this telegram indicated that he valued Kornli very highly. In the past 2 incidents, Kornli's calmness, decisiveness, and judgment of the situation's development had exceeded his expectations, and that old fellow Dunn made no secret of his admiration for Kornli in the telegram. There could only be one reason for Kornli to join the team, he requested it himself. He had sent a telegram to Captain Dunn last night, asking in a teasing tone why he was willing to let go of such an important person from the team. Dunn's response was very official, only 4 words. Demand transfer. From these 4 words, it could be seen that Dunn was slightly dissatisfied with this transfer. This so-called demand was very likely Senior Deacon Crestet's demand. If Kornli personally requested the transfer, and Senior Deacon Crestet could approve it directly without going through the relevant procedures, it meant they had a very good personal relationship. Good enough to completely disregard the church's management regulations for Nighthawks. The fact that Kornli could say, not suitable for discussion, at this moment also proved that he knew some hidden things, and Captain Al was very relieved that he had no intention of concealing them from him. Within a Nighthawks team, this was already a great deal of trust. Hey, boss, give me one of your cigarettes. Miguel took a rolled cigarette, poured a drop from each of 2 essential oil bottles, then lit it and took a deep puff. His eyes were unfocused, and he looked like he had taken some kind of drug. He chuckled twice at Kornli, then twitched a few times, looking like a lobster just pulled ashore by a fisherman. This is too scary. Kornli looked at Captain Al, pointed at the cigarette, then at Miguel. Boss. Don't learn from him. Captain Al glared at Miguel. This guy has a lot of knowledge in his head that shouldn't exist in this world. If it weren't for the Night Goddess Church's tolerance, his corpse would have been hanging on Backlund Bridge 3 years ago, mercilessly scourged by the sea breeze. Boss, I'm back. Ms. Lotta walked in with Steve Nelson, followed by 2 people carrying a mirror almost identical to the one they had just seen in the vision. They carefully placed it on the table and propped it up as Lotta requested. Instantly, the entire huge granite wall appeared in the mirror. It's about this high, right? Lotta looked at the bottom right corner, then covered the rest with a cloth. She needed to recreate the scene. Kornli nodded in confirmation. All right, dear Steve, tell me, from this mirror, which safe numbers on the wall can't be seen? Captain Al said in a deep voice. Greater than. Chapter 178. Tie up everyone except the king. This spot. Bank President Steve Nelson looked at the small area in the mirror. It seems to show a lot. It's the angle, Captain Al said. I need you to stand opposite it. Imagine those damn safe deposit boxes are hanging on the wall, and look carefully. Bank President Steve Nelson suddenly understood. He half squatted, his eyes darting left and right, and then stated decisively. Safe deposit boxes 161 to 180. Yes, that's right. Lotta pulled out the records she had just received and quickly flipped through them. Ah, only 2 of these boxes have usage records. Safe Deposit Box 163 and Safe Deposit Box 169. We just need to ask the owner of Safe Deposit Box 163, and we'll know the situation clearly, Ms. Lotta said, holding up the records. The owner of Safe Deposit Box 169. Captain Al watched Ms. Lotta raise her right hand and unceremoniously point at the dejected Miguel. That's right, I'm the unfortunate owner of Safe Deposit Box 169. Miguel sat on the ground nearby, resting his head on his right hand helplessly. Boss, I want to apply for compensation. I will never sign this report of yours, Captain Al said very decisively. Who is the owner of Safe Deposit Box 163? Viscount Darren Garcia. Lotta looked at the name. I seem to have seen this name in the newspaper before. Viscount Darren Garcia, a member of parliament in the House of Commons, very influential, one of the old aristocratic families of the LotM Kingdom. His grandfather was once a member of the Royal Guard, rising to the rank of Earl. Although after 2 generations only a Viscount title remains, in the House of Commons, he is a man who speaks little but whose words carry great weight every time. Steve Nelson's voice was not loud, but he remembered the information about the safe deposit box owner clearly. Old friend, you stay here. For now, don't go anywhere except the bank. I'll arrange for your 2 wives to stay at the Serenity Church for 2 days. Captain Al patted his shoulder. The bank now has guards, so it's relatively safe. Okay, old friend. Steve nodded. Lotta, you stay here for a few hours and ask the bank employees if anyone remembers what items those who rented safe deposit boxes put inside. Also, all bank employees are prohibited from leaving this bank. Have the guards go to the nearby police station and arrange for 2 shifts, 12 hours each, to guard the front and back entrances. No one is allowed in or out except us. What about those ministers and wealthy merchants? Lotta asked. They are the ones we need to stop. Anyone who tries to come in, knock them out and tie them up. A decisive look appeared in Captain Al's eyes. Except for George III. I'll take responsibility. Understood, Captain. Lotta was eager, watching with satisfaction as Captain Al, Kornli, and Miguel left in a carriage. The carriage left the South District, passed through 2 main streets, and quickly entered the Empress Borough, the wealthy district of Backlund, where all government officials aspired to own property. Indeed, the closer to the palace, the more expensive the land. Kornli poked his head out of the carriage window, looking at the tall, straight plane trees on both sides and the neat flagstone road beneath the wheels. There wasn't a single broken flagstone in this place. It was clear that professional personnel maintained it day and night. The carriage stopped at the entrance of Golden Lily Avenue No. 1. The guard, seeing the police department's exclusive, crossed swords, emblem on the carriage, mustered his courage to inquire. Viscount Darren Garcia is inside. Please wait while I announce your arrival, detectives. The guard politely tipped his hat and hurried inside. 2 second-class detectives and 1 third-class detective visiting simultaneously clearly indicated a major incident. As guards for His Excellency the Viscount, they also knew a few things. The black detective badges with gold edges, the sudden manner of their visit, and the aura of the 3 men, who clearly didn't care about the powerful, could only mean one thing. They must be one of the official Beander teams under the 3 major churches, the Nighthawks, the Punishers, or the Machinery Hivemind. Please come in. 3 visitors, how may I help you? Viscount Darren Garcia received them in his small study on the 2nd floor. A maid served fragrant coffee and steaming black tea, then gently closed the door. The Nighthawks team, under the Night Goddess Church, greets Viscount Darren Garcia, Al-Hassan said. Praise the goddess. All three simultaneously drew twinkling stars across their chests. The storm be with you. Viscount Darren Garcia gently struck his chest with his right fist, offering a salute. Viscount Darren Garcia was 42 this year, just beginning his political career in the Loan Kingdom. His hair was slightly graying, but he looked vibrant, his white home shirt stretched taut by his arms, clearly the result of regular exercise. Both sides sat on the sofas. Kornli looked at the huge moose head hanging on the wall, as well as the dried shark tooth model, the large nautical charts, and the map of the Loan Kingdom. It looked no different from the furnishings in other aristocratic homes. The three of you aren't here to arrest me because of my faith or the decorations in my room, are you? Viscount Darren Garcia chuckled. These are all things left behind by my grandfather's generation. No, we are here today for a very important matter, Captain Al said. The Backlund City Bank's vault has been robbed. From the crime scene, it appears your safe deposit box may have been targeted, Captain Al said. May I know what was inside? Darling, you have guests. A voice as clear as a magpie's came from outside the door, and Viscount Darren Garcia's expression changed. Please wait for me for a moment, all three of you. Viscount Darren Garcia opened the door and spoke softly to the woman opposite him for a few words. The click-clack of high heels slowly faded away, and only then did he lock the door and sit back down opposite the three of them. Phew. He exhaled, leaned slightly forward, and whispered. Actually, the items inside aren't valuable, but this information is very important. I can tell you, but you must keep it a secret. This information cannot be spread, or people will die. Chapter 179. My youth and love are stored there. Stored inside are some love letters between me and Queen Ophelia, Viscount Darren Garcia said softly. The last one was written the day before George III's wedding. PFF'd. Kornli couldn't hold it in and spat out a mouthful of coffee, accurately, spraying Viscount Darren Garcia's face. I'm sorry, extremely sorry. Kornli fumbled to pull out his handkerchief and handed it to Viscount Darren Garcia, who calmly accepted the handkerchief and nodded, signaling Kornli not to worry. Idle. He never expected that the man sitting across from him had actually cuckolded George III, the king of the Kingdom of Loan. Please introduce the details regardless, this is a requirement of the case. Miguel saw Captain Al's angry expression and instinctively swallowed the second half of his sentence, changing it into an excuse that was relatively more fitting for their trio's identity. Miguel, you really don't want next week's weekly salary, do you? However, I'm also very curious how Viscount Darren Garcia managed it. Captain Al leaned back casually, crossing his right leg over his left, wearing an expression that said, please explain in detail, otherwise we won't be leaving your Viscount's manor so easily. Kornli watched the two of them looking eager for gossip, leaned back, took out a cigarette, offered it to Viscount Darren Garcia, and kindly lit it for him. His meaning was also very clear. Now the room was full of men. This was a relaxed environment, a space exclusive to men. As men, we wouldn't easily divulge certain things. Similarly, as men, we like to share secrets that only exist between men. Damn it, you are Nighthawks. According to regulations, I believe you must keep certain things secret. Viscount Darren Garcia lowered his tone again, seemingly unwilling to share more on this topic unless absolutely necessary. I assure you, everything you say today will be kept secret under the gaze of the goddess. Captain Al-Hassan said with a sincere tone. When did we get this regulation? Kornli looked at Captain Al with a seemingly confused gaze. Do you still want to know this secret? Captain Al glared back at Kornli with a look of insistence. The two men made the correct decision with a single exchange of glances. We only guarantee we won't speak of it, nothing more. Gentlemen must know that my wife had already inherited the title of Viscountess before she was married, Viscount Darren Garcia said softly again. What does this mean? I understand. Miguel nodded. If this matter gets out and leads to an unfortunate divorce between you two, not only will your assets be split in half, but your wife could also pursue noble rights and reputation through the Elder Council, depending on the severity of the incident. The latter will be like a swarm of sharks smelling blood, scouring every penny from every pocket on your body, leaving you without even a clean pair of underwear. That's serious. Since this aspect was involved, Viscount Darren Garcia couldn't help but be cautious. Captain Al slowly closed his eyes, his right index finger resting quietly on his glabella. The four people in the room only felt the surrounding air ripple gently like a lake surface. This was Dream Inta. A dream was indeed a good place to share secrets. The surrounding environment rapidly changed. The sofa the four were sitting on transformed from a double-seater to single chairs. A household red brick fireplace appeared on the wall a few meters away, the fire crackling. A round coffee table appeared in the middle of the four, holding the drinks everyone liked. This is. Viscount Darren Garcia looked at the changing surroundings in surprise. Where is this? We are currently inside a dream. You can rest assured that no one outside of the four of us will hear a single word here. Captain Al picked up an iced coffee and took a sip. Amazing power, Viscount Darren Garcia nodded. He took a sip of the gin in his cup, calmed his nerves, and slowly spoke. Gentlemen must know that Ophelia and I were engaged when I was 14 and she was 12. According to the rules among nobles, the engagement date was to be announced at my 18th birthday coming-of-age ceremony. 3 months before I turned 18, our two families went horseback riding together at a farm in Eastchester County during the winter. This was one of Ophelia's favorite pastimes. Only far away from Backlund, and only when she was with me, could she shout freely and be a wild but liberated girl. This is exactly what I loved most about her. It sounds ridiculous, but it's true. But we didn't know then that our family's farm and the royal farm were separated only by a small stream, and that stream was shallow enough for any horse to wade across easily. We returned home very late that day, but the next day, her family sent a formal letter canceling her engagement with me, along with a new engagement letter. The person she was engaged to was George III, who was then Prince Augustus, and is now His Majesty the Emperor. Viscount Darren Garcia drained the gin in front of him, then was surprised to find his glass refilled. Undoubtedly, this was Captain Al's handiwork. Ophelia is the woman I loved my entire life. I was only 17 then, a naive, inexperienced kid, Viscount Darren Garcia mocked himself. When I heard the news, I went mad, grabbing my sword and gloves, wanting to challenge Prince Augustus to a noble duel. You wanted to challenge the prince's authority, the dignity of the royal family, and the honor of the Augustus family. Kornli raised an eyebrow. That was the case initially. But after stepping out and being hit by the cold wind, my senses and composure all returned. Viscount Darren Garcia gave a foolish laugh. At this moment, he was not a mature man, but had returned to that passionate, youthful era, seeming like a young man again. His attire changed from a standard noble house shirt to a fashionable shirt with patterns and ruffles, the kind only young people would wear. His trousers became breeches, and he wore shining black leather boots. The slightly gray hair near his ears turned black and curled down. Kornli had seen this popular low-in youth fashion from 20 years ago in magazines. I only had one thing on my mind back then. I would challenge Prince Augustus to a duel and die by his sword, to bear witness to my initial love. Viscount Darren Garcia chuckled, his tone suggesting that the person who went to his death was not himself, but a completely unrelated noble. Chapter 180, You Can Enjoy My Queen. So, you are still alive. Miguel raised his right hand. I suppose you didn't end up meeting George III at the end. That is the most amazing, or rather, the strangest part. Viscount Darren Garcia spread his hands. The night before I received the engagement letter, my father attended a ball. The next day, when the engagement letter arrived, the butler handed it to me directly. No one else was at home, and no one tried to stop me. I went straight to the royal hunting grounds, tossed the white glove onto Prince Augustus's face, drew my dagger, stepped back 2 paces, and awaited his challenge. Draw your sword and then kill me. Viscount Darren Garcia mimicked the expression, his face showing a look of dying for love. It was exactly the look a brash youngster would have. Believe it or not, that was my exact words at the time, Viscount Darren Garcia said, looking at the 3 strange expressions on their faces. Is it very strange? Regarding swordsmanship, I have never received formal training. He is a crown prince, the future King Loan. If we truly killed him, assuming there is a 1% chance that such a ghastly notion could come true, the Garcia family would become the first noble house in the kingdom of Loan to assassinate a king to whom they have sworn loyalty. My father, my aunt, and over 200 people in the estate would all be punished for it. Kornli watched the forced tear at the corner of his eye and remained silent. 17. The age so easily blinded by love. So, what is the strange thing? Miguel asked, bewildered. Everything up to now has seemed normal, and we know you are still alive. According to the noble code, anyone who accepts the white glove must initiate a duel, otherwise it is considered the greatest insult to personal honor. If Prince Augustus, let's call him that, accepted the white glove, and as you say his swordsmanship is truly terrible, then you could not still be alive. But you are still alive, which means he did not accept the white glove. Such a thing would be impossible among the nobility, let alone the royal family. I am eager to know what happened. Al-Hassan, though not as familiar with noble customs as Miguel, had a spark of burning gossip in his eyes, proving his keen desire for the truth. We had a friendly conversation. Viscount Darren Garcia rolled his eyes. No, it wasn't a conversation, it was his one-sided monologue. He said, quote, he wouldn't mind me continuing to see Ophelia, even that we could keep being intimate, even sharing a bed together, he wouldn't mind. He told me very bluntly that he has no romantic feelings for my fiancée Ophelia, he only wants her bloodline. He simply needs Ophelia to bear him 2 children. Bloodline. Reproductive tool. A hint of doubt flashed in Kornli's eyes. As compensation, he promised that after becoming emperor, he would grant my family a chance for success. After certain events, I would regain my marquisate and gradually restore the Garcia family's glory. After Ophelia gives birth to 2 children, we can meet again. Ophelia only needs to remain the titular queen, and he doesn't care about anything else. Miguel's right hand made a grasping motion in the air, as if seizing an opportunity. Don't care. You placed a heavy green hat on King Loan, yet he describes it with the light words, don't care. Believe me, no one could shock me more than what I felt then, but he said it solemnly, not at all joking, Viscount Darren Garcia said. Is this guy crazy? Miguel nodded helplessly. Given what you've done, hanging your entire family seems simpler. And then, Captain Al asked, Ophelia stayed with me until the day before the wedding. Viscount Darren Garcia leaned back, clearly recalling many happy moments. But since the wedding, we have never met again, not once. Even after she bore 2 children, when I tried to see her again, she never responded to the notes I attempted to send. No, this is nothing like a woman's behavior. If Ophelia was forced, then after she slept with another man, she would theoretically need a lover's broad shoulder or someone to confide in, not disappear entirely. Kornli's mind raced. He seemed to recall a possibility, but it was too shocking to contemplate. I need you to recall several time points, Kornli asked decisively. It may be crucial for the case. All right, Viscount Darren Garcia said. How long has it been since Ophelia last saw you? 19 years, 6 months, and 21 days, Viscount Darren Garcia answered without hesitation. I now believe you are true love, only those perpetually trapped in romantic tragedy would count the days so precisely. As far as I know, Lady Ophelia rarely leaves the palace. When does she usually appear in public? That question is a bit difficult. Viscount Darren Garcia thought for a few seconds, then said uncertainly, 2 days later is the Sea God Festival, she might attend. Every year at that time, George III does not attend the ceremony, and as queen, Ophelia will be present at this grand occasion. At least last year she presided, and she also worships the Lord of Storms. One final question, what was Lady Ophelia's maiden surname before marriage? Kornli asked. Elliot, Viscount Darren Garcia replied. No, that's completely wrong. If George III needs a bloodline, it could only be one of the few surnames he knows. Can you still remember the names of her relatives and family members? Kornli placed a blank sheet of paper and a pen in front of Viscount Darren Garcia. Of course. To marry her, I used to give each member of her family a gift every year on each holiday, and I have kept that habit to this day. Viscount Darren Garcia quickly wrote a list of names on the paper and handed it to Kornli. Kornli's eyes scanned the names, and at the top he finally found what he was looking for. Lady Ophelia's deceased grandmother's family surname is Truncest. It is the Knight Emperor, Truncest family. Lady Ophelia's true name should be Ophelia Truncest. Everything matches. And then, how did you survive? Miguel asked urgently. Chapter 181 Miguel, your life is in danger. He did draw his sword, but he struck the pommel against the back of my head. After I fainted he sent me back to the family. Viscount Darren Garcia looked a little embarrassed. His messenger said I'd barely walked through his door, shouted twice, and then collapsed from shortness of breath. He won't strike a man who's already unconscious, the duel can only be postponed. My father has woken up as well. Once he understood what had happened he sent Prince Augustus a lavish gift, and the matter was shelved. That shelving lasted more than 20 years. How convenient life is among nobles. I believe we now know everything. We'll take our leave, Captain Al said. The space before him cracked into fragments. Viscount Darren Garcia watched in surprise as he rose from the sofa. The cup of black tea before him had long gone cold. I wish you a pleasant mood, Captain Al said. We'll see each other in a couple of days, Kornli added. Captain Al glanced at Kornli, then led the way into the carriage. Miguel took the driver's seat up front. Kornli and Captain Al sat in back. What did you figure out, Kornli? Too much, Captain. Kornli rubbed his temples. Let me sort it out, give me a few minutes to think. First let's take Miss Lotta back to headquarters. All that's in her head is coffee and big-breasted maids, bringing her back is pointless, Miguel called from the driver's seat. You're right, but there's a lot that needs explaining, and I don't want to repeat myself, it could take until tomorrow. Kornli sighed. Captain Al drew a sharp breath. The three of them arrived at the entrance of Backlund Bank. Though they'd tried to keep the news quiet, word that the vault had been robbed had still leaked to passers-by. Before long a crowd had gathered. Every bank clerk came out to explain that only the safe deposit vault had been hit, the money customers kept in the bank itself was still secure. Yet the announcement had already drawn vault renters demanding compensation. They insisted bank manager Steve Nelson pay up, and many seized the chaos to name astronomical sums. All this was possible because accessing a safe required only a key and a signature. Once staff used their own key to open a renter's box, they would leave the vault at once to protect the client's privacy. Some greedy merchants now claimed they had stored gold and jewels worth £1 million in their boxes. The news sent bank manager Steve Nelson fainting again right after he'd regained consciousness. As for those trying to exploit the uproar, Madame Luoluota soothed their feelings and carried out the captain's orders to the letter. Every troublemaker was knocked unconscious and seated in a row along the wall. Their bodyguards received the same treatment. When Captain Al walked into the bank, he found two neat lines of wealthy merchants, counselors, and their henchmen sitting on the floor. Behind the captain, Kornli secretly gave Madame Luoluota a thumbs up, Miguel gave her two. So many people. Captain Al's head throbbed slightly, but the present situation left him no room for hesitation. We need reinforcements. Miguel, go to the upstairs office and wire the Nighthawks team in Sherwood Borough. Tell them to get here at once, the captain said, sounding on the verge of collapse. We're going to make this big. A bold idea. An hour later, 6 Nighthawks from Sherwood Borough stepped down from 2 carriages. Looking at the bustling crowd in front of the bank, both their eyelids twitched in unison. So many people, all of them ordinary citizens, how should they handle it? Praise the goddess. Captain Bach Jones of the Sherwood Nighthawks saluted Captain Al, pointing at the throng. My men are first-rate against criminals, but these are all civilians, what do we do with them? Keep order and separate everyone, Captain Al replied. He had already worked out a stopgap plan by the time they arrived. Organize part of the bank staff to work, have the rest explain to the crowd that their pounds are safe inside the bank's vault. If they demand cash, let them cash out. Those claiming to have safe deposit boxes must list what's inside and let the clerks verify their identities. Rabble-rousers go straight to the police. If a box owner makes trouble and won't listen to reason, knock him out and send him to the wall. Captain Al pointed to the row of owners, tied up, gagged, and propped against the wall. Deal with them like that. Tie them up and ignore them. Captain Bach raised an eyebrow. You sure? You're as thick as a pig right now, Al Hassan sighed. Tie them up, keep them from talking to each other, feed them 3 meals a day, let them take turns using the lavatory. 7 years I've known you, and this is the first time I've seen you so serious. Captain Bach nodded. 2 bottles of aged whiskey. Done. Captain Al Hassan shook hands with Captain Bach. 2 bottles of 15-year-old Speyside, I'll deliver them to your house myself. The 2 captains clearly went way back, Kornli noted to himself. Every one of these hostages had considerable wealth. If they knew their combined value amounted to only 2 bottles of 15-year-old whiskey, some would have leapt up from the floor in rage. You all heard that, Captain Bach barked. Get to work. As the rest of the squad walked past Captain Al, they nodded to him. Al Hassan was evidently on good terms with them too. The 2 sketches have gone to the police. They're making copies. In 2 or 3 hours those faces will be posted at the steam railway station, outside Macy's, and at the theater, anywhere crowds gather. Madame Luoluota nodded. Anything else you need? Back to the squad, Kornli said. Captain, we're pulling an all-nighter tonight. My shift's over. Miguel put on his hat and rose to leave. Kornli grabbed his collar, a charming smile curling at the corner of his mouth. On the contrary, dear colleague, you're still the star of tonight's show. Me. Miguel looked at Kornli in bewilderment, then turned innocently to Captain Al. Boss, didn't you tell him I never work overtime? No, this isn't about overtime, Kornli said flatly. It's about your life being in danger. Chapter 182 Miguel, how did you do it? Afternoon, number 40 Kent Cell Street, Orlando Interpersonal Relations Center, Squad Station. You want me to list the names of every woman I've ever dated? Miguel stared at Kornli in horror. All 346 of them. Captain Al sighed. Detective, really did have a good memory. This guy only had about 200 souvenirs. Could it be that he only developed the habit of collecting them after dating over 100 women? Forget it, I don't want to think about it, it's exhausting. If they're not living in Backlund, don't count them. I only want women who reside long-term in Backlund and have a certain status, or influential opera singers with some clout. Kornli said wearily. I need their names, addresses, the location of our last date, and most importantly, physical habits, like dominant hand, any distinguishing marks, scars, that sort of thing. There were some marks on the ladies I never got a clear look at. Miguel shook his head. Most theater boxes don't have decent gas lamps, and some places are even worse than those boxes. I give up. Boss, can I hit him? Madame Luoluota pressed her right hand against the knuckles of her left, producing crisp pops. For the female friend, Madame Luoluota, who also had a bit of a obsessive-compulsive disorder, save that request until after this case is closed. Captain Al sighed again, covering his eyes with his right hand, as if he couldn't bear to look at Miguel. Just write what you can. Kornli helplessly took a cigarette from the box on the table and offered the pack to Captain Al. Miguel grabbed a stack of white paper and a fountain pen, scribbling furiously while glancing up at the ceiling, as if recalling the pleasant memories those women had given him. We don't need the details for now. Madame Luoluota rapped the table with her right fist. Miguel jumped and started writing even faster. That's it, 6 in total, 3 of them titled. Miguel handed the sheet to Kornli. If I see them again, I'll remember more. Kornli took the notes and studied the 3 marked names at the top. Baroness Rihanna Fuller, 32, widow, lives at number 16 Vanilla Avenue, Empress Borough, has a scar on her right hand left by her late husband. Court Baroness Zoya McCarthy, 34, on her 3rd marriage, resides at number 27 Fallen Leaf Avenue, Empress Borough, 2 moles on her left cheek and a congenital defect on her right index finger. Selena Morton, court lady, 37, twice married and now single, lives at number 6 Winter Night Street, Empress Borough, a circular scar on her right forearm. Boss, we need to pay these 3 titled ladies, or rather, ladies with positions, a visit, Kornli said. What should we watch for? Asked Captain Al. Whether the locations of their scars match what Miguel described, Kornli replied. My memory's always been excellent. Miguel shot Kornli a sideways glare of dissatisfaction. It's only our first day working together, but I never doubt a Beander's memory. Kornli said. You're coming too. Kornli pointed at Miguel. As the one involved, you should still remember how it felt to be with them. The chemistry of a first meeting between man and woman is hard to forget. And tonight your job is to sense the difference between that first encounter and the second. You're an expert as well. Miguel's eyes lit up. For that line, I'll work overtime tonight, just this once. 2 people are enough for this sort of thing. Captain Al stood. Miguel and I will go. You 2 rest at the squad. If anything comes up, I'll telegram from the nearest office. Angela walked in from the doorway carrying several sandwiches and a kettle of hot coffee and tea. Captain Al took the bag and led Miguel out of the room. Ah, a few hours of leisure. Madame Luoluoda leaned back in her chair and looked lazily at Kornli. I'm hungry. So am I. Kornli looked at Angela. What do you usually eat? Turn right downstairs, there are a few small restaurants. We usually eat there, Luoluoda said. But the captain wants us on watch today, so it's dry sandwiches only. They don't deliver. Kornli shook his head. I can talk them into it. 45 minutes later, each of them had a medium rare steak, a whole sea bass stewed with rosemary and other unnameable spices, a large potato cake, fragrant baked bread, round roast beef patties, plus a crisp vegetable salad, all laid out before Madame Luoluoda, Kornli, and Madame Angela. What a feast! And hand-ground coffee, perfect, Madame Luoluoda exclaimed at the lavish spread. Your treat. Of course. Kornli smiled. Enjoy. 9:30 p.m. Miguel, his right cheek swollen, and Captain Al walked in. Kornli and Luoluoda were happily sipping coffee and black tea. I smell salt-roasted sea bass, Miguel sniffed. And hand-ground Dixie coffee and roast beef patties, from the Dixie family restaurant downstairs. Don't they never deliver? Kornli had a word with them, Luoluoda said cheerfully. Starting tonight, the 6 nearby restaurants will deliver to us, no delivery fee. Your face. Luoluoda looked at Miguel's right cheek. How many jumped you? 3. Miguel sat down. Bloody hell, we went out hunting evidence while you lot feasted in the office. At least you were happy in the dreams, Captain Al said. I had to sit through 3 dreams I didn't want to see. They were only dreams, Miguel muttered. Dreams don't mean anything. Yet they didn't affect your performance. Captain Al tilted his head at the ceiling. How did you manage to go from fully dressed to nothing but your underwear in 1 second flat? Miguel truly is gifted. Boss, spare us the details, Madame Luoluoda said. Can we skip straight to the results? They're all problematic, Miguel said grimly. Every single one. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.